want us to do it again? For the record. I think it'll be fine. So welcome to this ordinary meeting of Nelson City Council on Thursday the 22nd of September 2016. We have the live streaming now connected, so the meeting is live streamed. I'll just remind councillors to please use your microphones, and for people coming to the public forum, when you come up there's a button there that says talk. If you press the button and the red light goes on, the microphone is on, and press to turn it off again when you're finished. That would be great. So apologies this morning. I have apologies from Councillor Matheson, the Deputy Mayor, for lateness. Do I have any other apologies? No, in that case I will move that we accept the apology. Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Davey. I will put the apology. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Confirmation of order of business. The order of business today will be potentially slightly different from what is set out on your agenda. I would quite like to finish with valedictory speech, and that would mean I'll deal with public excluded quite quickly. I understand there's only minutes to receive in public excluded, so that will be quite quick. So I'll get that out of the way at some point. It will just mean that we'll need to vacate the public gallery for a couple of minutes only and then be back in, so it won't take very long. Councillors, just a reminder please to update your interests register, keep that up to date, and if there are any interests in relation to items, then as we go through the agenda, please declare them. And Councillor Barker has a matter that he wishes to raise with the Council, a very positive matter.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I think it's something that can be dealt with during the Mayor's report, but I think it's something that our city can be very proud of, that we've had a young person who has won 2 gold medals, a silver medal, 2 world records coming out of Stoke. I think it's an absolutely momentous thing that he should achieve so much. And the other momentous thing is that he's a grandson of one of our most effective and best mayors that this city has had. It's really something that's quite remarkable that this young man, despite the disabilities that he's had, has come through it all and achieved like he did and put Nelson on the world map. And I would hope that at Mayor's report time we might move a motion that could consider, such as giving him the key to the city, the symbolic key to the city, which means he would get free access to all council facilities for a certain time, or something similar, but at least something must be done to recognise his excellent achievements.
Thank you, Councillor Barker, and yes, the achievement of Liam Malone is quite extraordinary. It's been wonderful for New Zealand and for Nelson and for Stoke. Great to see Stoke on the world stage. And when we get to the Mayor's report, I will spend a moment in relation to acknowledging Liam. I have been in communication with the Paralympic Committee and with Liam's family, so I'm not in a position to update exact dates on when and what we'll be doing, but I will address that as we get to the Mayor's report. Now, next on the agenda we have the public forum, and today's public forum speaker is Mr. Gear Thompson. Mr. Thompson is joined by Mrs. Nanette Thompson, by Renata and Lynette and John, I understand, so welcome. Are you speaking individually? I don't mind if you want to speak individually, if they're separate public forums or together. Do we need some more chairs down there? I wonder if there's... Thank you, Nanette. Welcome, Mr. Thompson. Do you wish to speak? Do you wish to speak as a collective or individually? How would you like to do that today?
Speak individually.
Individually.
Different ones have different points. Obviously.
Thank you. Good morning.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and councillors, for the opportunity here today. I just feel it's a matter which has dragged on far too long, and it's time that something was done about it, and it would be good for you to hear from people other than myself of the situation. we believe that, excuse me, that there needs to be a change in the bylaw which enables the police and other people like the fire brigade to act. At the moment, we have very little success with approaching both those authorities because they say it's down to the council to sort the problem. Protesting should probably require a permit, as it does for busking, collecting, sandwich boards, all have restrictions under the bylaw, and there would be nothing wrong with having a permit which would enable people to protest, but they would have to follow certain criteria. People collecting outside your shop window have to have the approval of the shop owner. This is certainly not the case at present, and is a real issue for farmers who have to put up with in the morning removing drunks from their front door and having their prime shop window in the most highly rated part of town not being available, and also customers walking past having to put up with what's happening on the footpath with washing out, cooking, nailing posters to trees, etc. Now I'll let, who would like to go next? Lynette?
Welcome,
Hi,
Lynette.
I'm Lynette Stevenson. I'm the owner of United Travel in Trafalgar Street, so pretty much straight over the road from His Lordship. I've had a number of run-ins with Lewis Stanton, and one thing that is a reoccurring incident is trying to rescue tourists. It's usually in the evening because during the day it's not quite so obvious, but tourists don't know who he is or what it is, and they'll stop and look, and then they're caught, and they find it really difficult to get away. And on several occasions I've actually crossed over the road and rescued them and taken them up the road and said goodbye, to the degree that I've had people come in, they've obviously seen where I went when I finished with them, and I've actually had tourists come in the next day into work and say, well, thank you, we do appreciate that, because we just didn't know how to get away from them. They're caught by the signs, they see the signs there and stop to read them, which is a very bad mistake because then he pounces on you. But it's not only him, his mates that are now hanging out as well are doing the same thing. So I could see I could be full-time on that job this summer. And it's really embarrassing as a Nelsonian, as a business owner, to have to rescue people, you know, away from the intimidation, because it is intimidation. I personally have been intimidated by him, standing over me and promising me that if I raised my knee any closer, it would be, he'd have me for assault. But he is a frightening character, and I think we need to, the bylaws that apply to the rest of us must be applied to him as well. This is just ridiculous. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Lynette. Renata, good morning.
Good morning, Mayor and the councillors. I'm Renata Schrader. I own Life Pharmacy in Nelson City, and Mr. Stanton is obviously parked next door to us, next to farmers. And I am here to support Lynette, saying how threatening he is to us females. I just spoke to my pharmacist who is in charge of opening the business and closing the business. And sometimes I'm in charge of the opening or closing the business instead of Tom. And being that Mr. Stanton does accumulate a lovely crowd of unsavory characters, when you are there first thing in the morning or last time at night, the first thing I do is actually check who is outside my shop before I actually feel I can come out and lock the shop. Obviously, while I'm standing there waiting for somebody to come and pick me up, I know that the crowd at that point does know that I'm the key holder and that obviously I'm a really easy target for any unsavory business. Supporting Mr. Greer in saying how unsavory the windows look. Obviously, our windows are how we present our retailing space to the public, and we're trying to attract our customers through the windows that we actually have. So we are currently having a beautiful window for Shiseido fragrance, and people are coming in just to talk to us about this fragrance. While I'm passing by Farmer's window, all I can see is Mr. Stanton's possessions spreading further and further out. That far out that he's now taking a full side of the farmer's business, and I, as a retailer, walk past it by actually not even acknowledging the retailing space next to me. So I agree with the people who are present here asking that there must be something we can actually do to help us in the situation, because really we do know that retailing is the heart of our business. It is what attracts people to actually walk up and down the street and engage with us. And we have something on our street that if you are really polite to Mr. Stanton, he will leave you alone. We choose not to engage with him, but if you do engage with him, you will be having a very similar example like Lynette, where you actually have to be saving people from this situation. So thank you.
Thank you. John, good morning.
Good morning. I've made notes because anyone who knows me knows I could probably talk for quite a while, so hopefully this will keep me on track. So I'm John Hogan, everyone calls me Hoagie. We've got a surf shop on Hardy Street. We've just relocated from Trafalgar Street, so it used to be just down the road from Lewis Stanton. I'm probably here today because I feel like I've started a revolution with the retailers, that I've put this quite big flag out with a protest on it, and we now currently have our washing hanging off it as well. So I've literally got washing hanging outside my shop to sort of protest against Lewis Stanton, because I think the big thing with Lewis is we're all here, and I think all the people that are supporting us here behind us are wanting him gone, and they're saying it's enough is enough. And I fully agree with Renata that we don't even look at the window space, and we're retailers, so we take notice of other people's window spaces and their displays, because that's what you do as a retailer. You be aware of your environment. I'm aware of Lewis and his campground. I wouldn't even call it a site or a person sitting there, and his unsavoury characters go on. And I've already got off my notes, so I'll get back to them. Lewis does have a right to protest. I feel that he does have that right, and we shouldn't take that right away from him. What I have an issue with is where and how he's protesting. Where he's protesting, I think we all know. We all know the problems. Everyone here walked past him, has seen them. Hopefully you haven't had a bad experience and actually engaged with him. I had an experience yesterday. I had my 4 children with me, and because I was speaking today, I thought, I suppose I'd say respect, which is a hard word to use when I talk about Lewis. I went up and had a chat to him, and he didn't know that he knows my flag outside my shop. He's been there taking photos. It's plastered over his Facebook page. So I introduced myself, and we had quite a reasonable conversation. So he can talk reasonably to you. He is quite intelligent, even if people say he's not. And I said to him, I don't have an issue with you here. I think him being there is really unfair on the businesses that pay massive rents. And Gear here is the main landlord there, and not taking away from Gear's site, but farmers pay huge money there, and they pay the council massive amount of rates. Oh no, it's different from where I am on Hardy Street to where I was in Trafalgar Street. Is a good third cheaper. So I'm sort of aware of how much more expensive it is to be in those prime spaces, and it is the prime foot traffic. If you get the foot traffic results and see the numbers, that is number one for town, the whole of the region. In fact, the whole of the top of the south, that little spot where he's sitting gets more foot traffic than anywhere. So it's not fair on those businesses, and we talk a lot about farmers, but we're not talking about Cracker Jacks down the alleyway, Health 2000, the Candle Shop, Mr. Minute here in the city, Stormy's Man Cave, the barber shop upstairs, and the rooftop cafe, which has had 3 owners go under since he's been sitting there. I could be wrong, could be 4, but I know of 3 that have not succeeded. A lot of these businesses are feeling the impact in their bottom dollar. It's not just costing a little bit of money, it's costing them a lot of business. one point that Renata raised, and it's a big thing for me, is our local tourists and our international tourists are not engaging with those businesses. They're quickly going past, or they're stopping and getting tracked by him, and then they're like, let me get away, I get away, and they keep moving. So they're not engaging with, and I want to say it again, really just to make sure that farmers is an issue, but we've got locally owned businesses that are just little mums and dad businesses, Cracker Jacks, Health 2000, the barber shop. These are little guys that make their full income from being in that quite expensive location. Lewis pays nothing to be there. He just sits there and has a campground now. I don't believe he has a protest, and if someone could please inform me what he's actually protesting about. I started to ask him yesterday, and after about 10 minutes I had to keep moving because my 4 kids were getting quite restless. So I actually don't know what he's protesting. He is protesting against, I feel, the Nelson City Council. I see an NCC there and I see an SPCA sign. So I put it to him, why is he not in front of the council building or the SPCA out on Waimea Road? Because that's who he has the issue with. I put it to Lewis, what do you have an issue with farmers? And I actually went through every single business, and he's like, I have no issue with them, but I have a freedom of where I can be. I have this right. And it's like, does his right outweigh the rights of all these other people who employ staff? And if they're not there, that's more people out of work. It's just, I think his right doesn't outweigh the rights of all these other, not just individuals, but collective group that are hurting financially from him. Back to my notes, sorry. These businesses definitely do not deserve that. First thing you see when you come down as a tourist down our main street is this quite scary looking man and this quite scary setup. That is a big clothesline, that is a camp stove cooking there, which my 3-year-old could have quite easily just stumbled into yesterday when, and actually once they stumbled into, he's full on, he probably would have just knocked it over and directed like a wrecking ball and quite hurt himself. It's dangerous now that he's there, and I hope that council has the ability to do something to just stop that. I don't know if I'm wrong or right, but I heard, whether it's rumour or it's been talked when I've been talking to people, because I've talked to a lot of people about this, that I believe he used to camp down here in front of the council in that little alcove, and he was attacked, which was appalling, but is there now a sprinkler system there and an environment that stops him from camping there? If so, please turn the sprinkler system on, and let's get Lewis outside your building here. He has an issue with this council, and it's not you individual councillors, it's council as a whole. He should be here. He should not be in front of farmers. He needs to be somehow moved. I definitely support these guys in saying we want rid of him and we want him gone. Will that take 6 months? Will that take 2 years? Will that take 5 years? These businesses can't afford that delay. These businesses need him gone as soon as possible. And I don't think we can just have a magic wand and go, disappear Lewis. He could still be out on A Street or a presence in this town for years to come. I believe we really need to work on getting him away from that spot. If it does mean bringing him somehow up to in front of the building he is protesting against, then that's to me is a win. Sure, I don't want to see him on a main street. Even up here, all these tourists would see him, but they're less likely to engage with him because they're not generally walking at the movie theatre or here. They're walking around that farmers area. They're parking their camper vans in the car parks. They're coming in. They're going, I'm looking for the shops. So that's my issue, and that's what I really came today to push, is that it's extremely unfair on these individual businesses, and what can council do to get him away from there, not necessarily away from gone, because he has a right to protest, but to where he should be protesting, which is in front of the council building. I've covered everything. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Thank you. Nanette.
I agree with everything everybody said, obviously. My main concern is for the building and the tenants in it. We own the building, it's a fire risk. He puts cardboard against the windows, he does all that. And the tree outside, which I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, is an environmental issue. But he's allowed to put posters on the tree, which I didn't think you were allowed to do, but he can. He can also have his camp oven directly beside the tree. So if anything, in the summer especially, if that has a problem or he gets angry one day and kicks it or anything, that goes up, then we all have a problem. So we tried to clean the windows at Farmers, and we got a lawyer's letter from Zindel saying if we don't stop doing it, then we'll be issued with court notices under the Human Rights Act. So what do you do for your tenants when this clown is outside with his washing line and cooking, and then he comes within the side of Farmers where the right-of-way starts and he sets up a barbecue there? If I did that, I'm sure, as you would all know, I'd have an abatement notice served on me, but not him. He's allowed to do it. It's wrong, and I've never engaged with him, but from now on I can tell you I'm going to start. And whether he goes at me or not, I don't care a rat's ass. I'm going to give it a go. And I'm sick of it, absolutely sick of it. We have tenants ringing us up. Here in the city, for example, rang us up, I think it was about 8:30, 8 o'clock one night. Here he is cooking. Well, it's not good enough. I can't go down there and cook my meals in the middle of the main street. I did offer to hang my washing out and Gear stopped it. But I'm sick to time and absolutely sick of it. Now we've got retailers down in Hardy Street, one being John and the other being Untouchables, doing hanging their washing out. And I bet you anything you like they'd be rushing in telling them to take it down, but it's just not good enough. And it's all right saying, people, that I have empathy with you. I don't care about your empathy. I want something to happen. It's just not good enough. Auckland have a bylaw, obviously, because the police even said to Gia here that, oh, it wouldn't have happened in Auckland, we'd have got rid of him under the bylaw. So why haven't the councillors or somebody, in fact, now that I'm on board, I'll take it on myself if necessary, but why hasn't somebody looked at other councils and said, what's your bylaw for camping in the city or protesting or whatever? How can you not have, why do you allow, why can we have him in the middle of town camping and you wouldn't allow it? That's all it takes, a phone call. It doesn't take much. Let's get on to it. Stop stuffing around. Sorry. That's it.
Thanks, Nanette. Gear, is there anything you wish to finish with?
Tell her about Jan's mother.
Yeah, I would just like to mention a case of an elderly lady who was walking downtown with not very good eyesight. She touched his cardboard and he went off. And so typically she never will go down that side of the street again. She'd make sure she goes down the other side of the street. And it it is interesting that other councils can have regulations that cover this sort of thing, but I would certainly like an undertaking from everybody here that they are going to make sure that something is done about it, because this and the future council need to make sure that Nelson doesn't have this problem. And it's not only Lewis Stanton. We want something that covers anybody else that might come along with similar issues, because it needs to be general. We're not just picking on him for that, but he's the one that started this, so it needs to have regulations that prevent this sort of activity going on. Thank you.
There's one more thing I'd like to add. When we had a meeting down there of retailers, I came out of the meeting and blow me down, 2 cops were standing there with Lewis Stanton. There were 2, and I thought, something's going to happen, I was a bit excited, really. And I went and sat in my car and left the door open. I didn't interfere then. And so they were there because he'd made a complaint. Somebody had said fuck to him. Big deal. How many times has he said it down the main street? He'll start to me. But how many times has he said that and nobody does anything? But as soon as he mouths it, they're all there. Enough's enough. Please.
And on that, they were even going through the security footage because he's there, because there's a camera opposite.
Yeah.
So that's why he knows if anybody attacks him.
Right.
And they were bending over backwards for him.
Oh, it's terrible.
Yeah.
I'll just see if there's any questions from councillors. It's been a very long public forum, so I just want to see if we've got questions. Councillor Ackland.
Thanks for your presentation. I mean, I think you've identified the problem. Of course, it's a balance between interests, his and then legitimate interests of others to use the space, and probably expressing a failure of us really to do something over the last 3 years. What do you know? Because it sounds like what you were saying is it's more like an occupier situation, like a campground. You might be familiar with the Aotea Square in Auckland with the Occupy movement, and there was a nuisance claim brought by the council against the Occupy movement because they were camping. So I think that's something that really we should be looking at. Is it may not be a bylaw, you see, because the trouble with that, when I'm thinking about it, is that it can have unintended effects. It can have unintended consequences in terms of legitimate protest. But when the protest, like you're expressing, goes beyond that and turns into a camp, that's not really legitimate protest because it's not temporary. It's not of a particular kind. It turns into something else. It's more of an occupy. And so there is precedent for it. There is nuisance claims.
Yeah, go for it.
Could I
Was
just
that a-
add on that? Well, on that
Well, it
line,
needs to be a question,
a
councillor.
protest.
Do you know that?
But a protester shouldn't be able to have his campground there, as you're saying. The protester may be able to stand there with one sign or something, going on about whatever he's going on about, but not, just park there with all the paraphernalia and why is it everybody else has to get the permission of the shopkeeper to be outside there? That's the other problem.
Could I just
Can-
add something? Sorry. As we were just talking about somebody protesting and how can we actually control that, I had a lady in front of my shop who came on Friday, asked if she could possibly be in front of our shop to play a harp. She then came on Saturday and parked herself without a permission and was there actually for a whole working hours of the shop. And we were trying to talk to her and ask her, obviously, to update ourselves on all the rules that council has for being in front of our shop. And then she obviously pulled a Stanton card and said, I'm protesting.
Thank you, Renata. I have 2 more questions and then I'm going to close public forum. Councillor Copeland has a question and then Councillor McGurk.
Just a quick question. Thank you very much for your presentation this morning. It's given me a more of a fulsome understanding. And I understand you've all had quite some interaction with him. I'm just wondering, within the interaction you've had, do you have any idea of what he wants?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McGurk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Probably a question to Renata. You said that Lord Stanton has been threatening to us, especially to females. I'm just wondering the nature of those threats. Do they?
Well, it's not really him threatening to us because we choose not to, I choose not to engage and we know not to engage. But even this morning as I was coming here, there were actually 4 people standing there. Few had dogs. We know that they obviously look like people who don't necessarily have a permanent place of abode. One came into the shop with a dog in front of the shop and not tied up or anything. And he was quite abrupt to stuff. So what my problem is, when I'm leaving the shop, I'm locking my premises. Now, we're a pharmacy. We obviously have quite a area of goods. When I'm leaving and I'm waiting for someone to come and pick me up, obviously we find that this is the most sensitive time we are leaving the shop because everybody knows you're by yourself and you have the key. And so that is a time when a female, who obviously, none of us are martial arts experts, if somebody wanted to attack you out of, I'm not saying Mr. Stanton, but out of the characters that are standing there, they do know who is the key holder.
Well, you didn't quite answer. The question I'm wondering is the nature of the threat. Would it?
Threaten me.
Have you reported that to the police?
No, I escaped because I'm there all the time. I work until 7 o'clock at night, most nights, by myself, and I'm not willing to put I'm an ex-cop, right?
Yeah.
So I could quote you the definition of assault if you really wanted
No,
me
I'm
to.
just saying more.
And I know that him standing over me and threatening me, and the threat was in the movements and their facial expression. It doesn't have to be words, does it?
No.
And so, in theory, I could have had him for that, but I have to live with him. He's there every day, and I'm not brave enough to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm not the only one.
there's many ladies being intimidated.
Owners in that street who are the last ones leaving a business, and it is scary.
Yeah, no, the question was not so much about assault, but it's the feeling of being threatened, intimidation.
Yeah, lots of
Well,
ladies.
he's taller than me.
Yeah.
He stood over me about very close enough for me to have used my knee, but he sensed that one.
So the question was, has anyone reported, that those incidents of intimidation, incidents of feeling threatened?
Not personally, no.
I
To the
just
police.
avoid him like the plague.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, several times. He wants me to have a go at him,
He does.
He gets up to you and, he wants you to punch him, Well, I have to keep following it up many times, and they couldn't even find my complaint, the last one.
Mr. Thompson, and thank you, retailers. I'm going to wrap this up now because we've gone through the process of you. Thank you for coming in. We are hearing you. We understand how complex this is. I have asked the Chief Executive to consider options around a bylaw, and that matter is something that will need to be addressed, in my view, with some urgency by the new council. In the meantime, I would just encourage you that if you are concerned for your safety, that you continue to ring the police. We have talked about that already. It's really important that you do. And I have met yesterday with the area commander and reiterated the concerns of the public and the retailers in relation to this matter. Unfortunately, today there is nothing more that I can do about it. I encourage you to, if there are concerns, continue to contact the police. It's really important that you do.
Excuse me, if I feel for this, if I make a complaint about Lewis on the main street, like go down stairs, basically what you're complaining about is freedom camping. Is that a legitimate complaint I can make to council and council can act on that?
Council does not have a freedom camping bylaw at this point, John. It's a matter that Council has already discussed, and I would anticipate, Council is aware of this, that we will be promulgating a freedom camping bylaw again very early in the term, not for the purposes of Mr. Stanton, because actually we have a bigger issue. And I would say to you that is, just since you're here, and you will know that we're heading into a very, very busy summer season, you will have freedom campers arriving, if they're not here already, in the city. We are conscious of that. Without a freedom camping bylaw, there is we are restricted on what we can do. We have had some advice that we should promulgate a freedom camping bylaw, and that will be coming forward very early in the new term. In the meantime, the officers will be putting up some signage to encourage freedom campers to move to camping grounds to make sure that they aren't disposing of their waste into the drainage system. But at the moment, we're working with the tools that are available to us in accordance with the law. And the law in this case, I have to say, in my opinion, is not particularly helpful. And John, I'm going to close off now because it's not an public forum, isn't a debate backwards and forwards, and I need to close it now. So, but you're welcome to speak to me outside of the meeting or through my office. Thank you for taking the time to come in today. Now, moving on with the agenda. The confirmation of the minutes is on page 6 through 28 of the agenda. It's right there. I'll deal with it later. Confirmation of the minutes, pages 6 through 28 of the agenda, and I just think there might be one addition that is needed. We seem to have lost, excuse me, I just think we seem to have lost a lot of councillors. Ms Langley, I'm just going to pause. Are the councillors outside having a chat with the public forum? Because I'd really prefer they were in the meeting. Could you encourage them to just come back to the meeting? We'll just wait for a moment. We've got a quorum, but I just think it would be polite if we could. Polite. Happy to wait? It's polite, isn't it, Councillor? Yes, polite. Hopefully Ms Langley's managing to.
Madam Mayor,
Patrice.
not much except we've got a bit to go through, and we've got
Here we go. No, we're good to go.
some of us are good to be here.
It's all right. I'm sure that Councillor Laurie's on his way back in a moment. And Councillor Fulton. I really don't want to adjourn the meeting if I could avoid it. How are we going, Miss Langley? No? Oh, we're going well? I think this is as far as we're going to get. Councillor Ward.
I'm not prepared to wait.
Councillor Ward, thank you very much for attending, but obviously the council have got other things to do at the moment. Right, moving on with the minutes, there's one correction that I think needs to be made to page 15, and I think it would be appropriate to record that under item 12, where it says attendance. Councillor Skinner, I just want to check this, that you declared an interest and left the table. Would that be correct? So with those words, if we could add those words to page 15, I would be happy to move by Councillor Davey. Other points, Councillor Barker, before we get a seconder. Which page, Councillor Barker?
Refer to page 20 in item 22.4. The resolutions recorded there are not what I moved. I went to some length to have them stated in the following form. And if I go to the first one, it would read, as I moved it, that the carry forward of $16,029,000 unspent capital budget for use in 2016-17 be approved. As they stand, as they're printed, as they go into the council record, they don't make sense in the way that they've been recorded in here. And I went to some trouble at the meeting on all of these to have them recorded in the form that I believe. The same thing happens with 22.6. Rather than just resolutions that says note. Who notes? What note?
So Councillor Barker, can I just be clear? So you're looking at 22.4 on page 20, and you're looking at 26.6 on page 21, and I will just have to refer to the administration advisors to see whether we are.
And they are just the only
clear
ones
on
that
that.
I've mentioned, Your Worship, because they are ones that I specifically moved and took the trouble to ensure that I got them in the form that I think
In the form you
is
wish
correct.
to have them, all right.
It occurs throughout the other parts of the minutes as well, and I'm concerned that we're degenerating our standards.
And I do remember you raising this in the meeting, so just give me a moment. I won't adjourn, but I'll just take a brief moment to discuss with the Chief Executive and the Administration Advisor. Councillor Barker, the Chief Executive is quite clear about the issue that you are raising and happy to accept those corrections to the minutes. What will happen is that the Chief Executive will have some discussion about the template that's being used to address the matter that you are concerned about. Does it? All right. Well, when we get to that, we'll deal with that. Now, any other corrections or additions? Councillor Ackland? No. Councillor Laurie? Councillor Laurie?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just going to page 7, sorry to back the truck up a bit, but in the 4.3 it talks about the Nelson Residents Association presentation at the last council meeting, and it says, in response to a question, Ms Brand said the Nelson Residents Association supported council funding the Modellers Pond as it was a unique and accessible area for the community. I just wonder if that could be a bit more specific, because that was in response to a question I asked, and the question I asked was whether or not the NRA believed spending possibly $1.2 million on the Modellers Pond was prudent use of ratepayers' money. And that's quite different from the way it appears in the minutes to me.
You'd have to propose some wording that you think, you'll have to identify the wording you think is inaccurate.
Yep, I can do that.
Or you wish some additional wording, and then we can consider whether that is adding to the minutes.
It would be the wording I'd put it just the way I said it. In response to a question, Ms Brand said the Nelson Residents Association believed spending possibly $1.2 million on the Modellers Pond was prudent use of ratepayers' money. Yeah, it's on video.
Excuse me, could I
Well,
just ask the
1
public
million to
forum
1.2.
just to be quiet, please? Thank you. Councillor
sure
Laurie,
that's-
I'm just check that we've got, need to, again, just check with the administration
Sure.
advisors as to how they like, how the minutes come forward. Now, the advice from the Chief Executive is that we don't record the question in full, and we don't record the joining together of here is the question and here is the response. So that isn't how we present our minutes. If you feel it is imperative that your particular question on this is recorded, Councillor Laurie, then you'll have to ask the meeting that your specific question is recorded in the minutes, and then it'll be an in response as written here, is what the advisors are saying is as they understand it to be the correct method of recording, and also the accuracy as to the record. Yes, they're nodding. Yes. So your call. Do you want to test the meeting to see whether your
So we
specific
have to have a
question
vote
is?
on it, and
Yes.
no, I won't trouble the meeting with that request.
Right,
It's
thank you.
just, yeah.
I mean, you can welcome to propose it. It's a mover and seconder. Well, it's been moved, so it hasn't been seconded yet. So you could second it with that if you wish to, with the leave of the mover. Happy to second it. So it's been seconded as is, as it is. Fine. Thank you, Councillor Ward. All right. Anything else for the minutes? Anything else for the minutes? No. In that case, we've got some changes as proposed by Councillor Barker, and I think they've been understood and recorded. Yes, they have. And in addition, some smoids to page 15. Councillor Davey, you moved that we receive the minutes as a true and correct record. Are you happy with those changes? Yes, as amended. I would really appreciate, councillors, I know this is the last meeting, we're all fairly weary, but if you could avoid just shouting out across the room, I would really appreciate that. Thank you. So as amended, and we've got a mover, do we have a seconder? Councillor Barker, would you like to second it? Oh, Councillor Ward's already seconded. Thank you, Councillor Ward. In that case, I will put the motion. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. And now we will move on to the Mayor's report, pages 29 through 40 of the agenda. And just before we start the Mayor's report, we're actually at the start, before we receive the report, I will invite Tamati Olsen, our new member of the senior leadership team, to join the meeting. Tēnā koutou, Tamati. Welcome to this meeting. Your first meeting of Nelson City Council, and welcome to the role. We're delighted to have you as our kaihotu and member of the senior leadership team. Kia ora.
Oh, thank you, Your Worship. Kei aku iti, kei aku rahi, kei aku whakatamarahi ki te rangi, koutou rā ngā māngai kōrero, ngā manu kura, ngā rangatira o te hāpori o whakatū tēnā koutou. Tōku ingoa ko Tamati Olsen. My name's Tamati Olsen, and it's an honour and a privilege to join Nelson City Council in this fine city with lots of sun. It's been my first week in the job as a kaihotu. I look forward to working with, I know I've come at a change period. I look forward to working with the elected members of council and the organisation and continuing to build on the good relationships that have been cultivated with ngā iwi o te tauihu o te waka and councillors and the mayor into the future. That's enough. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Tamati. Welcome. Now, Mayor's report. We will first move that we receive the Mayor's report. I'm happy to move. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Barker. I'll put the motion. All those in favour to receive the report? Aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Now, just speaking just in relation to what is in the report, most of the items I think are fairly self-explanatory. You will see the documentation just in relation to the Special Housing Accord is attached. The visit from the Diplomatic Corps, this is a major visit actually to Nelson. We are receiving a very large delegation of ambassadors and high commissioners who are representatives from both living as in Wellington and Canberra. They are attending first the swearing in of the new Governor General and then coming to the top of the South Island. So it's a great opportunity for us to showcase our region. We have guests from a multitude of countries. Actually, the list is quite long. We have Finland, Israel, the USA, Kenya, Czech Republic, Samoa, Estonia, Germany, all sorts of countries actually coming to visit us. So it's a fantastic opportunity for us to really show what is so wonderful about our region. I'm looking forward to it. So I hope if councillors there, it will be an invitation to you to attend a pōwhiri at Whakatū Marae, and hopefully you are available for that. Our apologies about the relatively short notice for that occasion, but these things seem to be coming in a bit of a wave at the moment of guests coming to our city. Questions? Councillor Ackland.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've just got a question on the Housing Accord matter. It's really questions for the Chief Executive, I think, through you, Madam Mayor, because it looks as if there's been advice given on the authority of the Mayor and Deputy Mayor to sign on behalf of Council. And I'm just confused as to what delegation Council gave for the extension, like a change to the agreement that Council first gave in July last year.
Chief Executive.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm actually looking for the clause within the Housing Accord which specifically refers to the power of the Joint Steering Group, and it recognises that the Joint Steering Group has the ability to amend this accord upon agreement, and given the situation that the Council found itself in and the applicants under the Housing Accord that had been approved, the consent applications that we had received, it was appropriate for us to extend the accord for the purposes only of processing the applications for those developments which Council had said met the qualifying criteria. And on that basis, and with that qualification of only for the purposes of processing consents, I gave the Mayor the advice that she and the Deputy Mayor should sign that extension.
I understand the limited purposes. It's just a question on delegation I've got, because as I understand it, it was our council and Tauranga and Auckland that had timeframes of 16 or around 16 September, and the Tauranga Council did hold an extraordinary meeting in order to get delegation by their council to amend the Housing Accord. And as I read our delegation given on the 23rd of July last year, it was only a delegation to sign the accord, and that any change to the accord itself, of course, between the parties would require a council consent or council resolution to change terms of an accord. Otherwise there's no delegation. Do you have why there's a difference between us and Tauranga's approach, for instance?
Chief Executive.
Madam Mayor, that was a matter to which I considered at the time, and I come back to the fact I don't believe that Auckland had the same issue. I believe Tauranga was the only other authority that had the same issue. The delegated authority that you gave to sign the accord actually noted within the accord that ability to amend it under clause 19, and knowing that the advice that had been given to council officers and to council itself that provided consent applications were in by the 16th of September, we would be able to process them. I took the view that the intent was always to allow the processing of consent applications in by that date, and it was appropriate to extend the accord for a limited time for a limited purpose only, and that calling of an extraordinary meeting was not required.
Thank you.
Any further questions, Councillor?
Just my question really is on one on ultra vires, really acting outside of a power. My concern is that these housing accords are hugely controversial in the community, that there's been a lot of interest in them, that the Housing Accord Amendment provides for new housing accords, not just the provision of the currently existing ones. In the Minister's correspondence, that's what he said as I read it.
And Councillor Ackland,
So my question is there an issue of ultra-vires, or do you not see that as an issue?
Madam Mayor, I do not see that as an issue.
Okay.
I am my advice to the Mayor and Deputy Mayor was exactly that signing an amendment that would allow the recommendation of additional qualifying areas, additional areas being gazetted as SHAs, would be ultra vires. But allowing the processing of consents which Council had already determined should be recommended for gazettal was not ultra vires in terms of clause 19 and in terms of the intent of both the government and this council.
Thank you. Councillor Copeland.
So should we in future decide to extend special housing areas or make other extensions to this accord, I presume that will be coming back to a meeting of this council?
Yes, it will be.
That's
There's
great.
no, you remember the process that you have to go through is that first, for instance, at this stage, if someone was to come through the door to say, well, we'd like to now apply for another one, the Chief Executive's response is going to be, well, it's been made quite clear that this is an extension to allow those matters to be processed. And furthermore, in order for it to happen, it has to come to a constituted meeting of council, and then council has to make the recommendation through that process. This matter came to, the Chief Executive advised me basically the day before this letter arrived that there was an issue in terms of the legislation, that it didn't do as MB had advised us as a council to allow the processing. And what would have happened is that we would have ended up, for all of those people who had been working so hard to get on the 16th, that their applications wouldn't have been able to be processed. Now, I think that would have been a terribly unreasonable outcome. You've already agreed to those housing areas. They had been working, some of them through the night, to get them through for the 16th, and then to have turned around and said to them, oh, sorry, go away, that's the end of that. I don't think that's the outcome as a council that you would have been seeking, and nor do I think it would be reasonable. But there is certainly no ability here, without coming through this chamber, for any further recommendations to come through. Councillor McGurk. Thank you. Councillor Ward. Question for the Chief Executive. Do we know if Auckland's involves new applications?
Madam Mayor, I think Councillor Ward corrected himself to Tauranga.
Oh, Tauranga.
And in either case, I would say that I don't have that information to know.
Okay, thank you. I'm not sure about Tauranga. Councillor Rainey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I need some clarification. I don't understand this because you're saying that the extension allows applications that had already been lodged to be processed.
That's correct.
But does that mean that there will be a council decision in regards to those applications that have been lodged at some time between when you signed this extension and the 31st of December?
No. What happens is that the officers had worked on the advice from MB, and we had been advised that as long as people got their applications in by the 16th, that was the cut-off date.
Understand
but
that.
In fact, what happened was, what evolved was that in fact there's another clause that allows this Nelson City Council as a consent authority to be the processing agent for those consents. And in fact, that also was going to cease on the 16th. So Ms. Barton's team would not have been able to do anything with those applications. And that would have been a very unreasonable outcome for all of those special housing areas. So now what that team can do is they can now process those applications through the steps that they need to.
So to be clear, it's a subsequent question, to be clear then, were there some SHA projects that were proceeding? Because they'd been gazetted by government. I'm just trying to tease out the differentiation between the different.
I understand, and it is, and I was quite surprised when the Chief Executive and Ms. Barton came to see me around this to say, well, I thought we had this covered. The answer was no, that it wasn't, that there was an issue had arisen that says, because remember, you establish a special housing area, but somebody then has to put in an application, a consent application, to be able to subdivide, develop, build, go through the process. So that all has to come through, and the building consent processes as well. So that has to happen. So between now and the 31st of December, they all have to be processed. That's still a very tight time frame.
We have already approved them.
Council's already done its job. There's nothing further for council to do. We don't process consents.
But council was unable to continue to work on those
That's
applications.
correct.
So, Madam Chair, just a question then. Do you see that this potentially could be an ongoing process, and that on the 31st of December you may need to do this again? Or are we going to send a clear signal to the developers in Nelson that is, well, we know that there are a finite group because they're the ones that have made applications. There are no new applications. Will this be the end of the journey on 31st of December?
Well, that's for a new council to decide. So the issue here is that the 31st of December is to address, we've got these applications that are there, but the legislation is been amended, and that is for a new council. But what has been made very clear to the Minister is that there is no ability here or agreement that new special housing areas are able to come through this process. They're only the existing ones, and there's no work happening in that regard, and that would have to come back to a council meeting. But there's nothing for this council meeting to do in relation to processing consents, because we don't do that work. I understand. I'm happy to take questions on this, because believe me, I had quite a few questions when it came to me. Councillor Eklund.
I just need one more bit of reassurance from the Chief Executive. Is really my concern isn't with the intent of what this was trying to achieve, but it's the fact that the decision-making body that holds the jurisdiction, as it were, to do that maybe hasn't done it, which leaves them vulnerable to legal attack, and that's my concern. That's what I want reassurance on, that they're open to challenge, you see, because the right decision-making body hasn't made the decision.
Madam Mayor, I come back to clause 19 of the accord. Council delegated authority to the Mayor and Deputy Mayor to sign an accord and to form a joint steering group. And that accord is attached to your report, and it shows in clause 19 that the Joint Steering Committee has the ability to amend this accord, including targets, upon agreement. The fact that it says including targets doesn't limit it to targets only. So my interpretation was that if the Joint Steering Group had been given, if the Council had given delegated authority to the Mayor and Deputy Mayor to enter into the accord and sign this, knowing that it had the ability to amend the accord, then it was reasonable for the accord, for the date of the accord, which had been set at the 16th of September, to be extended.
My concern, just to really get clarification, is that my concern is, though, that's a very liberal reading of what a delegation was within the confines of an accord, without consultation with the party who's actually entered the accord, because of course it's the council that's entered the accord. And my concern is that on that reasoning, then potentially you could have the steering group making any change to it, in fact extending it in their own decision making without any reference back to council, extending it entirely and in a totally different way that was ever intended by council. And that wouldn't, in my view, be the correct delegation. So there's an issue, a live issue, which I just need a reassurance on, of what scope there is of delegation. I mean, I guess the decision's been made, and I guess I'm just highlighting my concerns over whether or not the right...
We'll ask the Chief Executive. So anything further you wish to say?
I don't think there's anything further I can say.
No. Councillor Eklund, I fully understand your questions because I had the same ones. All right, so I initially said the only way we can deal with this is to call an extraordinary meeting, which is quite tricky to do within 24 hours. Councillor Barker, but the advice was no, that was not necessary. I've taken that advice. Councillor Barker.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think we all as a council, or set of councillors, understood what we were trying to achieve with the special housing areas, that is to create more housing, affordable housing for people, young people, particularly families who have difficulty in being able to afford a house in Nelson. The circumstances that we have here, I fully understand the points that have been raised. The dates were critical, and I think if there is any concern whatsoever, I would be happy to move the motion that council endorses the signing of the amendment of the accord on the 15th of September to allow it to be extended to the 31st of December. And then there is no legal doubt ever that it is on council's books that the council endorsed the signing.
Would you wish to do that?
I wish to move
that?
it.
Right, you wish to have a seconder for that motion to endorse it. I'm just getting some advice to see whether it's. I've already asked the Chief Executive if that was possible. She indicated it was, but I will.
Madam Mayor, my advice to you would be that the accord is on the agenda with all of its clauses. It has been the subject of detailed debate at the council table previously. The council considered all the matters when it entered into the accord and it delegated authority. And so you have reported that you have exercised that delegated authority. If a member of this council wishes to endorse the exercise of that delegated authority, I believe that the papers that are before you are sufficient to do so.
Right, so it's been moved. I'm happy to second that. Speaking to that, I've got a speaking order. So speaking to that issue, I have questions. I'm sorry, councillors, I've got a speaking order here that was Councillor Noonan next, whether that's questions or speaking to. Question, Councillor Noonan.
Madam Mayor, I believe I understand what is requested and what has been done. My question is, have the council received any new applications for the housing accord which will be coming to the new council for decision making?
Question for the officers.
Madam Mayor, the answer to that is no. I would like to just highlight to all councillors on page 32 your letter that refers to the fact that as members of the Joint Steering Group, you hold a mandate to approve an extension for the processing of consents relating to qualifying developments in existing SHAs only. Any decision to recommend new SHAs is a decision for the incoming council. No officer has received an approach from developers at this stage. If such an approach was received, they would be told that it would be not a matter until the new council considered it.
Councillor Fulton.
So my question is that a matter which the new council will consider, or is that something, so are officers preparing a report on that issue as to whether the new council
I'm sorry,
wants
Councillor
to
Fulton, could you
consider-
just hold on a moment? I'm sorry, I'm finding this rather distracting. I'd ask if officers are going to speak to councillors, could you please step away from the table? Thank you. Councillor Fulton.
So my question is, will this matter come back to the new council concerning whether we want to allow new SHAs to come in? Because obviously developers aren't going to start preparing them if they don't think they can.
Madam Mayor, I'd have to say it's too early for us. The workload of the new council is already being prepared by this table, and the matter of whether or not the council wishes to extend its housing accord for the purposes of receiving new applications is something that the new council will consider.
I guess the reason why I'm asking this question is that I'm aware of a number of developers in Nelson who would have put in an application for an SHA, but because of the timing, they didn't feel like they had enough time to get it in by the 16th of September, and in fact they were told by staff there wasn't enough time. So it does seem slightly unfair that there's been an extension given to the ones who got their applications in, and there's not necessarily an opportunity for new developers to then also have that extension in time. So that's my question, is I feel that actually if there's a extension in time being granted, then to be fair, we should be offering that to everyone. So
Well,
I probably have a slightly
so
different
what is
view
your
to other people
so
around
what is
the
your
table.
question to the Chief
So my
Executive?
question, I guess I'm seeking some reassurance that this issue will come back to the new council for the new council to decide if they wish to allow for a period of time for new SHA applications to come in to council.
Well, Councillor, all I can say is that's a matter for the new council. It's a matter for the new council.
Well, it's a matter for the new council, but it's also a case of officer time preparing a report for that to come, because it's quite a short period of time for the new council to give that direction. I would have thought that the current council could give that direction, that will come to the new council, that the current council feels that that's an important matter to address.
Chief Executive, is there anything that you feel you could assist Councillor Fulton with at the moment in terms of process?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to just go back a step, if I may, because I'm concerned that Councillor Fulton may be expressing a view that others may feel about the extension and the impact. And I have to endorse the comments that the Mayor has made in relation to the new council considering the matter. But the matter of fairness is not with whether or not people got their applications in on time. As the council knows, there were a lot of developers who made applications under SHAs in the period before the last time the council considered the matter. And I would have to say that the council staff pulled out all stops to work with them, to a stage where I think you as elected members felt a degree of frustration about the amount of information. But we really were trying to work within it, because it was our understanding and the direction given to us that as long as an area was gazetted by 16 September and their resource consent application was in, then we would be in a position to process it. This extension, agreed to by the Joint Steering Group, exercising their delegated authority, was to allow that fairness to take place. In terms of whether or not the new council wishes to enter or extend the accord, will be a matter for the new council, and I would anticipate that the Mayor of the new council and councillors would have a discussion with me about whether they wish to see a report come up and in what time frame. At this stage, I am not working on that.
Okay, so it is for the new council.
Okay.
Councillor Skinner, in relation to this matter or another matter? No, I'll come back to you. I'll come back to you on that. Councillor McGurk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just need to refresh my memory. There was a completion date that these projects had to be completed. The actual construction had to be completed by, or was it just the lodging of the applications?
There is, I think, I'll call Ms. Barton because I think there's a slight change in the Act. I'm thinking 12 months or 24 months from the date of lodgement.
So through you, Madam Mayor, as I understand it, it's 2 years.
2
from
years.
the time of lodgement.
Yes, time of lodgement.
Time of lodgement. So this is not pushing out the completion date. I suppose what my concern is that we're just pushing it out, so we're getting these projects that are for these new constructions, new buildings coming on, are just getting pushed out, and pushed out, and pushed out. So I need some assurance that what we've already approved, and you're requesting that the council officers need time to now process, but the actual completion date of those particular projects hasn't shifted.
Okay, I think we'll just reiterate that if it's from the date of lodgement, then it makes no difference. Is that correct?
No, that's correct.
Right.
And we would have been in the situation where that they had understood if they lodged by the 16th of September, we would still be processing, so they understood that there was still that processing time that was required.
Okay, thank you. Now, any further questions? Councillor Eklund. Or speaking to the motion.
I have some questions on the motion to retrospectively pass a resolution in support of the delegation to sign this accord. My questions are, one, can council make a retrospective resolution in that way? Two, doesn't a resolution of that kind require a notice of motion? And three, has there been any engagement of the council's significance and engagement policy before a resolution is made of that nature?
Chief Executive, there's 3 parts to the question.
I'm sorry, Madam Mayor, I heard the significance at the end.
Can council make a retrospective resolution for a decision that's been made? 2, doesn't a resolution of that kind require a notice of motion? 3, has there been any consideration of council's significance and engagement policy before a resolution of that kind?
Madam Mayor, I don't believe that the council is seeking to make a retrospective decision. Councillor Barker is proposing a motion that endorses the exercise of delegated authority. I don't believe that is a retrospective decision. It's merely saying we feel okay about how you exercise the authority that we delegated to you previously. Secondly, does the matter require a notice of motion? I believe it does not, because it is on the agenda advising you of the exercise of delegated authority. I come back to the fact that Council gave delegated authority, and Councillor Barker's proposed motion does not actually need to take place. However, because the delegated authority has already been exercised. Finally, in relation to the significance and engagement policy, I believe those matters were traversed at the time that Council gave the delegation to the Mayor and Deputy Mayor to enter into the accord, and it would be my advice to Councillor Barker that if he did wish to move a motion in that regard, that it would be wise to make reference to the significance and engagement matters having been traversed at the time of the delegation, and on the understanding that it was not a matter of significance for a 3-month extension.
Just a question of clarity, if I may, Madam Mayor. So just on the notice of motion, though, there's no resolution that is before Council. It's a Mayor's report item advising, so it's a new item of business in terms of a resolution.
There is a clause relating to on the report from the Chief Executive or Chair.
The Chief Executive is going to have a look at the standing orders, and we'll keep on going. I mean, Council, to be perfectly honest, you've got some options here. In good faith, people applied for special housing. Some of you didn't want special housing, as I accept that. We're not here to relitigate that. But people in good faith entered into this process, and we advised them in good faith on the advice that we had from MB that as long as they got their applications in by the 16th, then we could process them. Unfortunately, there was in the law, when that came to the end of the 16th, the processing ability disappeared and it was gone. So in order to ensure that we carried out the function that you had agreed to, this is the mechanism that the Chief Executive advised to use. And I have to say, we could spend the next hour and a half going backwards and forwards, and if the Chief Executive had given advice in error, then yes, the Council may be open to judicial review. Councillor Ackland, that's quite correct. If the Chief Executive's given the wrong advice, someone wants to have a shot at judicial review, they can, right? That's fine, we accept that. But your choices are fairly limited here. We've got 460 odd new residential dwellings sitting there waiting to be processed. Miss Barton team's ready to go to the 31st of December, which isn't very far away. You either decide you want to do that, or you could resolve today that she ceases processing. Make your choice. Sorry, I'm getting a bit annoyed because we really haven't got a lot.
Are we in debate?
Well, I'm just asking you, where do you want to go with this? We can sit here for an hour and a half. We're waiting for the answer from the Chief Executive, but I have to say your choices are fairly limited. I think your point's been well made, Councillor
I've been asking
Ackland.
questions, Madam Mayor. I haven't been able to debate, so I've made
Chief
the point.
Executive?
No, I was wrong. I was referring to revocation, not a notice of motion.
So what do you need to tell the Chief?
I don't-
Is a notice of motion required?
I don't believe so.
Chief Executive, I'll let you answer that through your microphone.
Madam Mayor, I don't believe you need a notice of motion, because the matter before you is actually the fact that the Mayor is advising that she has exercised the authority that was delegated to the Mayor and Deputy Mayor when the Council agreed to enter into an accord and gave the approval to sign the accord agreement. And Clause 19 shows that the agreement can be amended. So I don't believe a notice of motion is necessary for a motion endorsing the actions under delegated authority. If, on the other hand, you wished to revoke the delegated authority and turn that away, then that, I believe, would require a notice of motion.
Right, thank you. Now, Councillor Copeland and then Councillor Rainey. Oh, apologies, Councillor Ward. I think you've been waiting quite some time.
So I do understand what's happened here, I think. My concern is a little bit for the people that couldn't meet the 16th of September deadline, and the advice from staff that they were, if they had approached somewhat earlier than the 16th, that there wasn't enough processing time for their application. I'm just wanting to get a sense of how many people may have missed that deadline. If people came in earlier in September and were advised it was too late.
Chief Executive.
Madam Mayor, Councillor Copeland is referring to the time required for processing, but there was a step required beforehand, which was for the council to resolve that that a particular development met the qualifying criteria, and that the council resolved to recommend to the minister that that development be accorded a special housing area status. That time frame had been met, I'm thinking back in July, because the process was you needed to work with the officers to ensure that you could meet the conditions. The council needed it on a publicly notified agenda. The council made a decision and then needed to put that resolution to the Minister of Building, who then required to put it to a cabinet meeting to get an order in council. There was a considerable time frame long before the 16th of September. The 16th of September deadline only relates to the processing of consents at this stage.
Thank you.
Right. Councillor Ward, then Councillor Rainey.
It wasn't a process that we all signed up to, but it was a process that council agreed to and went through. And in fact, everybody had the same opportunity. You know, they had the same amount of time. And council bent over backwards to enable them to actually put their applications in. We have to go with this. It is a reasonable delegated authority. It may be that somebody would appeal it. I don't think they would have reasonable grounds for appealing it, quite frankly. Out of this will come some dwellings that might not otherwise have been built, and that is a plus. I think we need to get on with it. You know, some of us didn't like it. That's relitigating something after it's happened on and on and on, or something. It makes, you know, it actually beats ourselves up unnecessarily in my book. Now, if there had been some questions, and I read the report, and I was pleased to see, no, there are no new applications. This is simply enabling what we agreed to happen to occur. And that seems to me to be a reasonable thing to be decided under delegated authority. It isn't a huge ask, I think.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. Councillor Rainey.
Madam Chair, I do understand your rationale for extending, wanting to agree to an extension. I don't necessarily agree with it. And I know that we're not entering into a debate because it's not the purpose of why it's in the Mayor's report. However, do you agree that as governors of the city, we are essentially just bystanders watching a process here where we can have no actual effect? And the reason that I'm saying that is because it seems to me that the goalposts just shift when the Minister wants to shift the goalposts. And indeed, for those of us who may have some hesitation about that, for whatever reason, we're not able to debate that today. We just have to sit by and watch it happen. So that is my, do you understand, or do you agree that the frustration that some of us could feel, because I do indeed think this is yet again a scenario where central government is just dictating what happens, and that those of us around the table who may not necessarily agree with the thrust of this legislation do not have the opportunity to be able to articulate that frustration in this instance.
Well, no, Councillor Rainey, and I think what you've got here is there's no shifting of goalposts. Actually, there's a confirmation. No, I'm sorry, there's not. There's a confirmation of the goalposts that you as a council were expecting. You were expecting, when you signed out on these special housing areas, you were expecting them to be processed, correct? You were. You're expecting them to be processed. And what Ms. Barton had to come and say was, actually, we are not going to be able to process these as expected by this council unless we address this. So what we have done is we have fulfilled council's expectations, nothing more.
Subsequent question, Madam Chair, is through no fault of our own, around this table, and there was an oversight in the timing. You've explained that, and I accept that. Through no fault of ours, that occurred. Now, well, we didn't know that point. We didn't know that point, which is why the extension, which is exactly why you've asked for the extension. But we do not have an ability to be able to debate what's happening today. And that's where I think, no, well, it's true. It's true, because actually, if that was the cut-off date, legislated cut-off date, and it wasn't an ability for this council to be able to process those consents, then that is what happened. That has been changed now by what's happened here, and I don't necessarily agree with that.
I understand that, Councillor Rainey, and your preference may have been that the Deputy Mayor and I did not sign this. I understand that, and therefore there would have been no processing of those consents. Now, that may have been your preference. My view as Mayor of the city was that as a council, in the majority, the council resolution was to accept those special housing areas, and you anticipated them being processed. Now, I accept that some of you may have preferred that actually I folded my arms and said to all of those applicants, sorry, your applications, and I'm going to say it quite bluntly, are down the flusher. And that may have suited your personal preferences.
I didn't say that, Madam Chair.
But I am not prepared to do that, because I think that was not a reasonable thing in relation to the process that you as a council had agreed. It's not an easy situation to deal with. I think the Chief Executive gave considered advice. The Deputy Mayor and I took that advice. The matter is here today. There is a motion that has been moved and seconded, and I just want to check with the Chief Executive in relation to the wording of that, so that we can get that dealt to, and then we will speak to what has been moved and seconded. Councillor Barker, we've just got some wording. Now, we've got some interesting technology today. If you're wondering what the suitcase is in the middle of the room, the projector's decided it's had its day. So the wording is...
Madam Mayor, to the mover, I would speak that the proposed motion would be that the council endorse the extension of delegated authority under the Housing Accord, on the understanding that the extension of the Accord Agreement to 31 December 2016 is not a significant matter under Council's significance and engagement policy.
Okay. Just use your microphone, please.
Yep,
Can I withdraw my second?
endorse that wording and therefore so move.
Okay. And for the purposes of this meeting, because I don't want it to be any inferences that this is me having two bites to the cherry, I will withdraw my seconding, and somebody else can have the opportunity to second it. Thank you, Councillor Noonan. Now, speaking to the motion, Councillor Noonan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think that it would be unreasonable not to endorse this motion. It's not the right wording. I agree with extending this for the purposes of the completion of the applications that have come in. I think it would be unreasonable not to do that. I recall the day that we sat here for a very long time and actually approved all those all those applications, and it would be a day wasted if we didn't actually extend it for a few weeks for those people to get their applications complete by the end of the year.
Councillor Ackland.
In good faith, people applied for special housing areas, and that's right. And in good faith, we told people that the housing accord would expire on the 16th of September this year. And in good faith, we make our decisions as a governing body in public, and we make it so that people can actually have awareness of decisions we're making, they can hear our debate on issues, and they can have their input through public forum when those issues are before the council. The issue that wasn't before this council was the extension of that housing accord. Now, rightly or wrongly, the housing accord has been extended. The issue I have, and I'm speaking against the resolution, is that we're now endorsing retrospectively something which was done in behind closed doors, and that there was no council meeting, no debate, and no opportunity for people to comment on the extension of the special housing accord. That's the problem I have, as it was no delegation of council for this to occur in my view. So I'm against the motion.
Anyone else wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Fulton, then Councillor Rainey.
I take note on page 31 of the agenda that the Honourable Nick Smith actually suggests to the joint steering group that they extend the date to allow for new SHAs and to process the existing consents relating to the qualifying developments. So I'm actually going to take a very differing view, that actually the steering group has identified that they have the delegation to extend the time for the existing SHAs, but they don't have the delegation to extend the time to allow for new SHAs. And that steering group has made the decision that that's a decision for the incoming council. It could have been something that had come to today's meeting, and we could have had a discussion today as to whether this council wanted to extend the date for new SHAs as well. It doesn't, but the joint steering group has made a decision that they have the delegation to allow for an extension to the existing ones, because that's something council's already decided on, but they don't have the delegation to allow for new SHAs. Now, I think that that is the right call of the steering group, and I don't actually think we need to have the recommendation on the table as per the Chief Executive's advice, because that's something that they had the power to do already, and I don't think it needed to have as much debate today as it's had. I think it's really important that this does come back to the incoming council for the sake of fairness to the rest of the community who might have missed out on that timeline. But I'm going to support the recommendation because it's here now.
Thank you. Councillor Rainey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's quite clear that this was a bit of a bungle in terms of the legislation, and that generally people were unaware that there was a point beyond which these were not able to be processed. I accept the rationale as to why you're trying to do this. I don't necessarily agree with it, as I said before, but what seems very frustrating to me is that I know the pressure that this council was under on that last day. It was intense. I've never, ever seen anything like it in 9 years of local government. I was sitting around the table till 7 o'clock at night, having to deal with a whole host of SHA applications, and to be here now, a few weeks later, and to realise that there's some kind of extension being sort of crafted up here, or drafted up here. I would like to know, personally, and I doubt whether I'm going to be able to get an answer, all of us sitting around the table, do you actually know which SHA projects you're talking about that's going to have an extension? Are you aware of what's actually been agreed to here? Where's the accompanying report outlining what's going on? And I can pretty much know in my mind that hardly anybody around the table would know which exact projects we're talking about. Does that matter or not? Well, that's, I think, something for you to consider. I'll be voting against it.
Councillor Laurie and Councillor Ward.
Thank you, and forgive me if I've missed this, but if this recommendation that Councillor Barker's putting up, motion, okay, this motion. Thank
Councillor
you, Madam
Laurie.
Chair. If this motion that Councillor Barker is putting up, if that's not supported by council, what will be the effect of that on the special housing area projects?
Nothing. Nothing in the sense of it's that the signature's there, but what Councillor Barker is doing is saying we endorse that approach, and we think that was the right thing to do to allow the processing of the applications that council had voted, resolved to be created, to then be able to be processed as you had anticipated.
So Councillor Barker's motion does not actually affect the outcome of this business.
In terms of the special housing area ability to process, no, the ability is there now to process, and what Councillor Barker is saying is he endorses the step that was taken to allow that to happen.
So it doesn't make. So it doesn't. Sorry. So it doesn't make any difference.
Okay. So question, I've got Councillor Ward, and then I've got.
But it does make a difference. What it says is the council endorses the actions that our deputy mayor, the people who have delegated the authority to. I would support. Do I care about the detail of it? No, I don't, because I've already approved. Some of them I didn't approve, but I approved most of them, and the other one I live with. But I've already done that, and I expect that my approvals to be action, and the action that the delegation allowed enables the things I wanted to happen to happen.
Thank you. Now I have had 3 speaking for. Does anyone else wish to speak against? Nobody else wishes to speak against. In that case, I will take. Would you like a right of reply, Councillor Barker?
Would you, Worship? Just to say that the reason that I did this, I guess it does have an effect. It removes any doubt. And earlier in the question time, I believe some of the questions would enter doubt into the minds of people who may have a need to do so. I'm disappointed that it's become so political. It's simply a procedural motion to endorse what's been able to happen and has happened, and I can't see why this actual process has taken so long, apart from, well, I won't say it.
I'm now going to put the motion. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Just show of hands, please. Are those for? 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Call for a division. Thank you. Oh. I can't take it. The view is that the vote has been taken, and I would agree with that. Yes, I'm just dealing with your point of order, which is that the vote has been taken, and I'm going to just take some advice from the Chief Executive. Councillor Ward, your view is that the vote has been taken. The matter is at my discretion as chair. I believe the vote has been taken. Motion's carried. Moving on. On to the rest of the Mayor's report. Apologies, Councillor Skinner's been waiting very patiently, and then I'll come to Councillor Copeland. Thank you.
No, that was very good. It was an important issue to get through, so I'm quite happy to be waiting for this. It's in line with the Brook Cabins in regards to your Mayor's report, and Rachel, you're well aware of my views on this. If it's an appropriate time, I'd like to put a motion for the Brook Camp. I respectfully read what you have in your Mayor's report, but I do feel it's delaying something that doesn't need to be delayed, and I have a motion. I want to put a motion forward that we open one block of cabins for immediate use for tourism accommodation for the spring-summer period, and that we advertise to seek interest for an additional camp staff or manager, and that, as in your report, the Chief Executive prepare a report for incoming council for further utilising the existing resource.
All right, I'll just need to get that wording. You've got that wording there, and I'll just need to take some advice from the Chief Executive, Councillor Skinner, to see whether we can take this. There are some issues around how we can deal with this in terms of the Local Government Act. Just a moment, and we'll take some advice. Councillor, I'm going to ask the Chief Executive just to give some advice on the wording that is there from Councillor Skinner. Now, Councillor Skinner, I would say that I have already traversed this issue with the Chief Executive, which is why you've got the wording that is here today. But Chief Executive?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This matter was raised with me by the Mayor earlier, and my advice to her was that officers believe that there is both operating expenditure and capital expenditure required to open those cabins, and will incur additional cost in terms of cleaning and staff and so on. And for that reason, it will have an impact on Council's budget. You need to understand that and understand the options and advantages and disadvantages before you make a decision. And that is why the wording in the report is that I be asked to prepare a report for the incoming council.
Questions for the Chief Executive, Councillor Skinner?
More of a statement, if possible.
That's fine, Councillor Skinner.
Myself and the Madam Mayor, as we went through the cabins, and I think you'll agree they were extremely good condition. I would even say mint condition. They're not the Hilton, but the cabins, the bedding, the curtains, the flooring, the electrical work, the plumbing, everything is in good working order. In fact, while I was there with a good staff member, pulled the sheets off the pillowcases just to see if there was any moulding. Like, they were absolutely perfect condition, is a good word. And at current facilities, and there has been some good work that's been done to it, repairing things electrical and roofing that had to be done in the past, but it was all up to proper working order. I do not believe there needs to be any more money spent. Does not need anything done or changed to make them operational. They are operational right now. Right now there's 20 plus people living correctly there or accommodating there, and making use of the ablution blocks, the kitchen, the lounge, etc. The cabin doors are closed, but as you recall when we went through, they were extremely, not just good. I was expecting a bit of mould or mildew or a sheet that mightn't be changed, but when we opened up, they were in mint-like condition. All I'm asking is that we open a block, which is two cabins. You may see it as a trial period, but it's definitely a need for those usage of those facilities. We currently have a staff member living full-time on the premises who takes in people, self-contained tourists that come in and come and go. We already have staff maintaining and cleaning those facilities, which are used by 20 plus people. We'd only be adding another 1 or 2 people, or maybe 4 people, to the cabins. Bit of background that while I was up there on the weekend with a good Mike Rodwell, who used to be a city councillor and was the chair of the committee that overlooked and the running of the camps in Nelson that were owned by the council. And while we were there, a gentleman named Rob turned up with money in the hand wanting to rent out a cabin. So there's, I feel there is little and no risk in us opening the doors of at least 2 cabins to see how they go. And I do understand that if you are going to get it fully operational, you will need some more staff managing or running for the other hours, and that we do seek an interest, advertise to seek an interest for that. And I do accept that a report would be helpful for the new council to see how we further make use of our existing facilities there. But that's a bit of the background of my extent on that. And it's something I want to, as you know, I'm quite passionate to
Yes,
open. It's not
understand.
just me, it's a lot of people. There's a good lady, Dorothy Rose, having to come up, and she had a 8-page, 1,000, I have to correct the figures, she dropped in a 1,500 signatures of people, not just in the Nelson or Brook area, but outside the greater area. So it's not just a Nelson community, but in the greater community, and the good of the greater community, that we need those open for tourism, which is happening now.
All right, Councillor Skinner, at the moment you were proposing, so you've had some advice from the Chief Executive about her concerns and advice to Council in relation to be able to proceed with that. What you're seeking is that, and we haven't got a seconder for this, so that you would be seeking that a block was opened as a trial, is what you were just saying. All right, so you will second that, Councillor? Well, we're going to have some words, because you've had some advice, Council.
Madam Mayor, I'd like a time frame put on that so that it's not a council meeting that's
All right.
way off. I want to...
We're just going to get the screen organised. And then I've got a speaking order. I've got Councillor Ackland. My apologies. Councillor Barker's got a question. And then I have got Councillor, I'll take questions at this stage, or if you want questions are fine. Councillor Ackland. If I just have Council's attention, though, that would be good. And I think Councillor Copeland's been waiting patiently too. But no, not to speak just yet, but are you waiting to speak? Some questions, all right, I'll get you in the list here. And anyone else in the list? Councillor McGurk. It's a good thing I didn't write a long Mayor's report, isn't it? Right, we're just getting this wording sorted out.
You could deal with my question. It doesn't require that.
I'll take Councillor Barker's question while we're waiting. Councillor Barker.
Thank you. And the question's about clarification of what's in your report, Your Worship. I'm wondering, we're talking about 2 cabins. How many cabins are there total? Maybe the Chief Executive can answer that.
Question is how many cabins in total?
First question.
That's the first question. I'll just make a note of those. And
Second question relates to the wording in 3.3, where second question relates to 3.3, where your report, Your Worship, talks about setting up a possible report for the new council, setting up the options and costs.
That's correct.
I'm thinking that I would like to know in due course the income rather than the costs. I believe that these are going to return an income when we make them available. I believe that the income is going to exceed what I anticipate the cost might be, and consequently I would like to ensure that when you do your report, Chief Executive, that you do have the full picture. How much money we're going to make out of it, rather than a loss situation. It's going to be it could be a win-win for the city, getting accommodation for people who need it and actually making some money.
All right, so we'll note that. It's been noted. Chief Executive's noted in relation to revenue. Now, I had a bit of a speaking order here. Do we have, how are we going with some words?
We are needing to do it on a separate machine in order to, it will be a little while.
It'll be a little while. We might have to take a morning tea break yet. So, anyone able to ask questions who's not needing the wording on the screen? Yes, there are several. So I've got Councillor Copeland, then Councillor McGurk. Oops.
Thank you very much.
Apologies.
Interesting to hear about the good condition of the cabins. 3.3 talks about a view to making the cabins operational to assist with peak summer demand. Are we talking about this year? 2017, 16, 17? That's a question.
I believe so, yes.
So, in the way it's been presented in the Mayor's report, if I can ask, is so the proposal in the Mayor's report is to to put together a report for the incoming council with a view to opening them this summer.
That's correct.
Is that correct?
Well, you're asking the Mayor, it's the Mayor's
Oh,
report,
it's
and
the Mayor's report.
the answer is yes.
I see. So there's an expedient time frame here.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's enough.
So my question needs to, I guess I would need to hear from the mover what the point is, what the actual, if that's the case, that the intention is to have these open, which it sounds like it is, what is the point of opening a couple earlier?
Well, we're not going to take questions across to other members at this point. I'm going to just go to Councillor McGurk. Oh, sorry, Councillor Eklund first, then Councillor McGurk.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just wondering if this is a major or minor matter before council, because if it is, because we are committing or committing to some operational expenditure or even capital expenditure, we have a freedom camping strategy currently debate and bylaw under consideration. I'm also a bit concerned if this is why this matter has not been put on the agenda, or at least brought up as a late item. And finally, I want to know why this can't be delayed to a subsequent meeting of this council.
So I go to they are questions for the Chief Executive, and Chief Executive will answer. She's already given her view that there are some issues here.
Madam Mayor, I would thank the councillor for the technically correct way in which he has identified those issues. That was my more informal way of referring to the fact that I believe you need a report setting out all of the options, advantages and disadvantages, because council has had a condition assessment undertaken for the Brook Camp, but it hasn't actually given effect to that yet. It considered a campground strategy at the community services meeting in August, and at that stage did not seek the early opening of the Brook Camp, and I am aware that it could have an impact on council's budgets, even noting that there may be revenue forecast. So that is the reason why the Mayor's report says she has asked that a report be prepared for the incoming council.
Moving on to Councillor Eklund.
Sort of following up from Brian then, so there's no jurisdiction in the standing orders then to bring this item then, correct? I just don't understand on what basis, because the last 3 years we haven't been making resolutions on the hoof and a Mayor's report. I'm just wondering why we can make a resolution now.
Chief Executive.
Madam Mayor, my advice was that this was a matter that could not be considered
Oh, okay.
for that reason.
And so my original question actually was just, could this not just be an operational matter that's looked at for the summer if the cost of cleaning those cabins is within the existing cleaning budgets, for instance? Like, could it be accommodated in that respect so that as an operational matter that could be open potentially?
Chief Executive.
As long as the matter stays within the operational budgets, then the answer is yes.
All right. So I want Council to understand there are some real issues in addressing this, which is why it was the way it was in the report. I understand Councillor Skinner wishes to pursue this, and I understand it's been seconded. Is that correct? I have some challenges with it being actually dealt with today because of the issues that have been raised, and I guess the question is whether I'm in the ability to rule that it's not, or whether actually you just like to deal with it in the way that I would expect you to deal with the issue in front of you. So I'm just pausing in relation to get some advice from the Chief Executive. Councillor Skinner, I think you know that I'm quite supportive of where you want to go with this. I do believe that there may be opportunity, and I will be asking the Chief Executive if this ceases here, to use best endeavours to look at existing budgets to see what is possible. And that will be certainly the request, because I fully understand what you're seeking. Chief Executive, can I take this or not take this?
Madam Mayor, I don't believe standing orders provides for the requirements of the Local Government Act. So once the motion is moved and seconded, the councillor has the opportunity to seek the leave of the meeting to withdraw that motion on the understanding of the advice that's been given, or the council needs to hear the advice of the Chief Executive and vote accordingly.
That's what I thought, right? So that's where we're at. So that's where we need to go to next. Now, speaking order, and I would like to get this finished fairly quickly. Councillor Fulton.
I've got a question because when the campgrounds were closed down, the staff advice was that we had to wait for the Recreation Reserve Management Plan and we had to wait for all these things to be done before we could then look into the future. So why is that? I probably the Chief Executive's advice. Why can we now suddenly reopen parts of it if we're not? So the guidance before had been to wait until all these steps have been taken and we have a plan, and I completely support Councillor Skinner's desire to reopen the camping ground, but we've all been waiting really patiently, and I guess we're nearly there. So is it not better to take the right path?
Well, that sounds to me like that doesn't sound like a question. That seems like you're expressing a view for the debate.
My question is why have we been waiting? If we can do this, why have we been waiting for the Recreation Reserve Management Plan to be completed?
Madam Mayor, I think my advice has been quite clear to you. You should not do this.
Right.
You should not pass this motion because you don't have a report in front of you. And the report would traverse a range of issues, and they might be some of them.
Thank you.
All right, so I think that's enough discussion. The mover and seconder can withdraw if they wish to, and we can note, or we're going to put a vote on it. Right's not withdrawn, we're going to proceed. Right of reply, Councillor Skinner.
Thank you for that. Madam Mayor, you and I had a look at the cabins with the staff member, and I was very comfortable, and I believed you may, and best that you answer that, I believe you're very comfortable that it was in very good, usable, immediate, usable condition. And as I've said before, if there's already people using it, we have got it open for self-contained accommodation, and there's already people there in contained accommodation. The ablution blocks, the kitchens, I said before, the electrical, plumbing, everything is in good working order. I do not believe that there is a large cost involved in opening the two cabins, and I do not believe that it will take much more efforts and energies to use within what we already have there and maintaining, and the place is already open to some extent. My concern is that it's been nearly 3 years now that the cabins are being closed. It's a facility which is costing us if we're not using it, and we should be getting a return on it, and we've just passed for the freedom camping decision with signage, etc., and it'd be somewhere we can send our freedom campers to, and it's not a good look. It's not a good look us keep delaying opening cabins. We don't need to have a report or a discussion or a vote when we've decided to have someone in there maintaining it, or we've had to get a contract for cleaning or mowing the lawns, etc. That's already happening, and we haven't had to go around the table. I don't believe we need to go around the table or a report, waiting longer for a report to open two cabins. So I do want to see those open, and I would be interested in your response to that, Rachel, because the cabins were in extremely, extremely good condition. Right now, I could open a door, turn on tap, cook on a meal, go to bed, get up, leave, pay my money, and make very good use of those cabins. And there are people, like I said before, right there with money in their hand saying, can I spend a night in the cabin? I'm passing through Nelson. So I don't see why. I see we do not need to wait for another report, just delaying it. And it may seem that the report is saying for making use of this peak summer season, but the peak summer season in the next council, if you're looking at December, January, before we move that, is too late. The season is now. This is the tourist season now. The freedom campers are hitting Nelson now. We need to open those up. So I see there is no risk, or very little risk, of us opening cabins. There's no great cost or unidentified cost in opening all. As on when I was up there, Madam Mayor and the staff member, things that were needing to be done, like roofing, electrical, etc., had already been done. As I say, it is mint, and I'm not understating the condition is in mint condition. But I do still want to move this motion, and I will ask for a division. Thank you.
Thank you. Division's been called for. No questions now.
Councillor Ackland, how do you vote? Division has take that as a no. Councillor Barker? Councillor Copeland? Councillor Davey? Councillor Fulton? Councillor Laurie? Councillor Matheson? Councillor McGurk? Councillor Noonan? Councillor Rainey? Councillor Skinner?
Aye.
Councillor Ward?
No.
The Mayor?
No. The motion is lost, 8 votes to 5. So that concludes that particular item in relation to what was moved. In relation to the issues that are in the Mayor's report, Councillor Skinner, I really value your contribution in trying to get this moving forward. I have said to the Chief Executive I'd like her to use her best endeavours within existing budgets to see what is possible. It may be that we can get one of those blocks open, but to actually go through the process of moving that today, I don't feel comfortable doing that given the Chief Executive's advice.
I appreciate your time over the last
No, I
period
appreciate
of time.
that's fine. Thank you, and I think it was a very worthwhile exercise, us popping up. Now, any other questions on the Mayor's report? Then we'll go for me. Oh, Councillor Copeland.
Waiting for a wee while, so I just wanted to end on a positive note with the Mayor's report and just ask about these delegates that are coming.
Yes.
Now, these important people that are going to be showing the delights of our region.
Yes.
Who's going to be showing them around and where are they going?
They are going to quite a few different places. So they are going, just let me get my diary
who's
up.
hosting them, if I may ask?
They are being hosted by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade and Nelson City Council. And they are heading, it's been quite a lot to organise, and I want to thank Jeannie Tynan in my office for being so fantastic at dealing with these matters. She's done a wonderful job, along with the rest of the team, and they are going, excuse me, just get my diary up. They're going to be welcomed at the marae we've talked about. They're going to Nelson Pine Industries. They're going to McGashin's for lunch, I think, in a trip round the brewery. They are going to Cawthron. They are going to, and a special request, which is very interesting, I'm glad you asked this question, they had requested time to go to the Nelson Market. So there you go, the Nelson Market was on the list, and they're going to Wow. And there may be a few other things, little ones that they've got, but it's a very action-packed trip.
1 day,
while they're
2
here.
days?
Day and a half.
Day and a half.
Day and a half. Or 2 days. 2 days. So busy trip. Yes, so it's a great trip. It's the biggest delegation that we have had to Nelson. And I'm sure that if you're at the Saturday market on the first, then you'll have the opportunity to meet some visitors from many countries around the world.
Can I ask another question, Madam?
Yes, you
Mayor?
may.
It's a matter of process. Maybe I should know the answer to this. I was surprised that we didn't have an opportunity to debate Councillor Skinner's resolution, and I feel that.
Oh, apologies.
I feel that because of that, that was perhaps a lost opportunity for him, because had we had that debate, it may have turned out quite differently. So I'm just curious as to why we didn't have that debate. Was it because Councillor Skinner asked for a division and that meant that we had to put the motion, or why did we not debate that?
Probably an error on my part. My apologies, but it's been and done.
It is, but just,
Yes. Yes.
could have actually got across there, that one. I would have been interested to hear from the
Well,
pros myself. It could have switched my mind.
Well, if you'd raised a point of order, I would have dealt with that. So that's what you need to do in the meeting. So if you feel that I'm not doing what I need to be doing, and every now and again, you're right. You're absolutely right. Absolutely. There is, I don't believe in perfection. So if you've got an issue, your responsibility at this table is to raise a point of order, but we've dealt with that matter now. No, I didn't hear a Councillor Ackland raise a point of order. And I'm sure if Councillor Ackland had raised a point of order, the Chief Executive would have said to me, there's a point of order.
But he did say, are we not in debate?
Yes, well, we've dealt with the matter.
And the Chief Executive said no.
I'm sorry, Councillor Copeland, we've dealt with the matter, and you can't go backwards. That is part of standing orders, and I can't go backwards. Well, you could. You have mechanisms to deal with that. Sorry, Councillor Copeland. I understand that everyone is tired and got a lot going on. I'd like to finish this meeting today. Now, any other items? I'd like to finish with the Mayor's report that I thought might be about a 2-minute item, but we're going to come back to Councillor Barker's.
Yes, we will. So, I ask you to recall that the matter that I raised in the order of business earlier on, relating to this very significant achievement of this young Stoke man, this disabled man who has achieved the very best in the world. He's got 2 gold medals, silver medal, and 2 world records. He is the grandson of a past very, very good Mayor of Nelson, and I know that as Mayor you'll be sending a letter of congratulations. I would like to think that we could even go a little bit further, and as I suggested earlier, perhaps give him the key to the city, which means, in effect, that it's a notional key, but it means that if there's any facility in council that council has, that he gets free entry to it, and free access to council facilities.
Well, Council, I would say to you, I have got a media release that should have gone out by now, but I've been sitting at the council table for a little bit longer than I intended. We have been in communication with the Paralympic Committee and also with Liam Malone to make arrangements for welcoming him to Nelson and acknowledging this magnificent achievement. And yes, we have a key for the city that is currently being made. I have to get them made, so they are underway at the moment. Benjamin Black Jewellers makes them for us, and so we have one being prepared for that event. I would tell you the date and the time, but I need to do one more phone call to make sure it's absolutely nailed down, which I don't feel it's appropriate to do sitting in the chair, so I need to get out of the chair and take an adjournment for a very late morning tea, and then I'll be able to address that when we come back. So why don't I just take the adjournment for morning tea, and then we'll conclude that matter when I come back, and by then hopefully I've got a date for you. I don't want to put Liam in an awkward position. It's quite a bit. He's a young man who's got to go back to university. He's got university study to do and an awful lot of commitments on his time. So I'm going to take an adjournment, and I'll come back once I've just got this date. I just need one phone call, so we'll adjourn, and then I should have that confirmed. So morning tea is here. We'll resume our meeting. Now, just finishing off with the Mayor's report. I have been working, we were just discussing the wonderful achievement of Liam Malone, and I have been working for the last couple of weeks with the MP for Nelson, Dr. Nick Smith, to see how we could recognise Liam and his achievement, and working with the family to make sure that we respect the fact that there is quite a call on Liam's time. He is very keen to come to Nelson. He does have studies that he needs to be focusing on, and we are working to arrange a time to ensure that we have a celebration that accords what Liam was seeking, which is he's very keen to be able to connect with students, with school students, and particularly with Birchwood School. So we are working around some of those matters at the moment, and I hope to be able to, within the next 48 hours, put out a media release with Dr. Smith, just with confirmation of the date and the time for the event. We would want, and Liam's really keen to, as I said, connect with students in the region, and we need to make sure that we can work that into what is being proposed. As I said to you earlier, yes, we are in the process of having a key made, key to the city. I have given, in this term of council, 3 keys to the city. One to Richie McCaw when he was here as Captain of the Crusaders, one to His Royal Highness Prince Charles and the Duchess Camilla, another to the Silver Ferns, and this will be the next one. Now, I will, as soon as so, within the next 48 hours, we hope to be able to confirm that date. It's just important that we do. Liam's only just, as you know, got back into the country, and he needs some time to work through his diary, but he is very keen to be coming home to see people in Nelson and have an opportunity to meet with particularly school children in our region. So I'm happy to, Councillor Barker, if we perhaps would like to just formally in the minutes acknowledge and record the significant achievement of Liam Malone, and if you've got some words you'd like to propose since you raised it.
Just before I do so, you'll be presenting the key to him at a civic reception, will you?
There will be a public function, and I'm not in a position to tell you exactly where that will be yet, because I want to confirm that with Liam in terms of what he'd like to do.
Well,
there will be a public event.
Quite simply, did this council advise Liam Malone of its sincere admiration for the achievements that he has been able to make at the Paralympics 2016.
Right, so
and in so doing, bring great notoriety to Nelson, along those lines. Bring great acclamation, or acclaim.
Acclaim would be better, I think.
Acclaim, yes.
I think we have the intent of that. That's the intent. Right, that's been moved by Councillor Barker. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Davey. Anyone wish to speak to the motion? I think we all agree it's a magnificent achievement, and it's been an absolute pleasure and delight to watch a young man just light up the world with his enthusiasm. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Now that concludes the Mayor's report, and we move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the landfill recommendations been moved by Councillor Ward. This is pages 41 through 97 of the agenda. So I just need to check in case the officer needs to make any corrections or additions to the report. Invite Mr. Kirby to join the meeting. Could I just check with the mover and seconder that you were moving in entirety? Thank you. Thank you.
There's no amendments to the actual report, but there is already an amendment to the deed, minor amendments. I'll just highlight them to you, because I think the way the recommendation of the report is minor amendments to the deed can be made under delegated authority. But on page 69, which is the photo of the Eves Valley landfill, there's a drag your cursor at the top there that's going to be removed. So that's one editorial. Page 69.
Page, through the chair, please. Page 69. Anything further?
And then the other one is on page 58, I4, which is partway down. That clause about the arrangement, the word enduring basically means it's going to be lasting forever, but in actual fact, the enduring is going to be until Gully 1 of York Valley and stages 2 and 3 of Eves Valley are completely full, and then a subsequent agreement arranged. So there's some changing in wording on that. I can tell you exactly what the wording is. I've got it here. Basically, it's going to say that the arrangement between the councils for a regional landfill facility is intended to be enduring, subject to the cancellation and termination provisions in this agreement until Gully 1 of York Valley Landfill and stages 2 and 3 of the Eves Valley Landfill have been fully utilised as regional landfill facilities and are at capacity, and then the arrangement be renewed to accommodate a future regional disposal / landfilling facility. Full stop.
Right, happy with that?
Mayor, can I request that that's be sent out? I'm happy with that, just that it's sent out later on so that we can adjust our copies.
Records, so if we could just have that.
I could send that out, yeah.
We could just have that, the amendments to that clause just circulated by email. Thank you.
Otherwise, the report stands.
All right,
Thanks.
thank you. All right, so it's been moved and seconded. Do we have any questions for Mr. Kirby? Councillor Barker.
Not a question to Mr. Kirby, but just the point that I raised earlier. Can we please have the resolution, if it is passed, to read that the council receive the report?
I want to deal with this now, so I'm sorry, can we please have, what are you seeking, a change to what has been moved and seconded? Or would you like, are you seeking a change to what's been moved and seconded?
I'm seeking it that we record it in a way that's going to be understood by future people who read our minutes. And
so
it's a little bit better in that the preceding sentence says it is recommended that the council, but that gets cut out when it goes into the minutes, and it doesn't then record that it's actually the council receiving the report. So I would like it to read that the council received the report.
All right, so you'd like that change, and I'm going to see whether we can get that change, because I don't really want to be revisiting somebody else revisiting this in the future. Might as well deal with it now. That the council receive. So they mover and happy with that. So they just have the preceding words. Right, thank you. Any questions, Mr. Kirby? Councillor Copeland.
Yes. My questions on page 62 around the administrative agreements and the operating account. So these three sections under 21A, B and C refer to the payments from the business activity, and one of them talks about agree a schedule of payments 50-50 to enable them to fund any waste management or minimisation service, facility or activity. Do I understand it correctly that previously this closed account apportioned a great deal of its surplus towards waste minimisation, and is there any change in the level of service or the level of funding in this particular activity class under this new agreement?
No, the intention is for it to stay the same.
Mm-hmm.
Currently, Nelson City Council funds all its solid waste activity from the fees from the landfill. There's no rate input.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Tasman District Council do have some rate input into some of their activities.
Mm-hmm.
So the way this has been worded is basically it carries on from now, but it'll be 50-50 split,
Mm-hmm.
and which means that probably the Tasman District Council may have to alter their rates to suit. But at this point in time, the way the income is worked out, Nelson City Council won't need to consider that.
And can I just ask a subsequent question? Because my interest is obviously in activities that encourage waste minimisation and activities that we may not as yet be undertaking in this space. So the proportion being 50-50 between the two councils, is there any indication of what proportion of the surplus would be attributed to specifically waste minimisation activities?
It's very strongly influenced by the waste plan, the waste management and minimisation plan, which is a joint one between the two councils. That will identify all the services that the councils are wanting to provide, and out of that we'll determine what the funding is that's required for it, and then that'll be reflected back in the landfill charges.
And just to refresh me, if I may, Madam Chair, when will the next iteration of that waste...
It's about to start. 2012 was the last one, and they do it every 5 years, so we'll be doing one next year.
Last question. Through that process, there will be obviously an understanding of the potential budgets in this area. Would that be? Will they be? I'm imagining this is going to be fairly revenue-producing business unit. Will there be an understanding through that joint waste minimisation plan of the budgets that are potentially available for this activity, waste minimisation?
Yeah, the budgets are not going to be significantly greater than what they are now. The intention is with this amalgamated thing is to actually take the two councils and bang them together in terms of the landfill operation and the fees that are used for the different activities. So unless the new waste minimisation plan actually raises a whole lot of activities that council want to do and requires extra funding, then that will feed back into the budgets and feed back into the landfill gate charges. So it all depends on the waste minimisation and management plan. Yeah.
Okay. The lever is essentially
Councillor
there.
McGurk.
Correct. Yep.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Looking at page 52, paragraphs 7.3, 7.5 and 7.6, it talks about a potential breach of the Commerce Act, lessening competition, opportunity to lodge a application for an authorisation, but the question I really have is, when's the earliest opportunity when that's likely to happen?
What?
Well, it says at 7.6 that council's earliest opportunity will be lodging an application. When's that likely to be happening?
We've already started it, and we're hoping to lodge it within the next couple of weeks.
Yeah. You have any indication of a possible outcome or likely outcome?
Well, part of the discussions has been, there's a reason why we're doing this. As you're aware, Tasman District Council have had a couple of challenges under the Commerce Act. We could actually forget about the Commerce Act and progress with this, but potentially someone could raise an issue and hold the whole thing up and we go through a process. So we decided that we'll go through the process now. The Commerce Commission would actually be looking at this in terms of the market and the public benefit. Our indications at this stage from the economists that we got involved is that the public benefit probably outweighs the commercial market, in which case we'll be presenting that to the Commerce Commission to get basically authorisation to form this unit. There's a lot of work being done on this. There's cost effectiveness in doing it and the like, but we still have to go through the hoops. There is a risk that they will decline it, but we want to work through. We believe we've got a good case to go through that process to get that authorisation so that we can go ahead and we won't be open to challenge in the future.
Okay.
Councillor Fulton.
Yes, I have a question, page 83 of the agenda, concerning the structure of the RLBU, and I've raised this issue before, expressing my concerns that the iwi member who's appointed doesn't have voting rights, and I'd like to have some advice on that. And those concerns were raised, and I note that the structure's remained exactly the same, so I'd like some advice as to why.
The advice on this one, because this is just a single joint committee and both councils do have other joint committees and other joint arrangements, and my understanding is that the two councils will be looking at how the iwi are represented as a whole on all their committees. So at this stage, this is replicating what the NRSBU is doing, and so until a decision is made by the two councils on the iwi reps, we're intending to replicate the NRSBU, and if there's a decision later, then both the NRSBU, this and any other joint committees can then align with that new policy.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Well, I guess
Any
I
other
have
questions?
a subsequent question.
Councillor Fulton?
So, to me, this seems to be the time to address this issue in terms of appointments, because the argument put was that only elected members should have voting rights. However, there's unelected members appointed as well. And there are other systems, like the District Health Board has 4 appointments to the DHB, 2 of which are Māori, and they have voting rights. So I guess to me it's an anomaly for this day and age that the Māori appointment does not have voting rights on a governance table, at a level of governance. So I don't feel like this is, it might be historical that that's how it's happened, but at this point in time we should be reviewing the structure of governance for the RLBU.
I'll go back to the point. I think the risk you have of making an arbitrary change now is that you could actually end up creating a precedent, number one, and number two, when you get a more consistent one across the board, you come and change it again. So at this point in time, the aim is to replicate the NRSBU, and then the 2 councils consider how they consider iwi representation on all their committees, and then once that's been finalised, change all the structures of all the committees to align with that.
So when will that happen?
I can't answer that one.
It's a discussion that we've already flagged for the new council. We've already discussed that and flagged that as business for the new council as part of our joint committees. Councillor Ward.
That was my recollection, my recollection was at the joint committee that we would do that, and it would be a pity to, at this stage, to hold the process up over this issue, as important as it is, and I think it is absolutely important, but we get this through and then we sort it out later.
Any other questions? It's been moved and seconded. Anyone wish to speak in the debate? In that case, I'm ready to put the Councillor Ward. Councillor Ward.
But this is an extraordinarily important thing for me personally, that I don't have any legislation to buy now, but once I was sent to a waste conference and for my party, and I sat there and I knew there was a gap in the legislation, you see, so I penned something on the back of an envelope and staff then went away and turned it into a piece of legislation, and after I left Parliament it was put into the hat under Nandor Tankshos's name and it was passed. So it was a private member's bill, and the waste minimisation and management bill went through. And it is this, and the joint committee is an outcome of that. The waste strategy is an outcome of that. And when I went there, that we were throwing away 10 million kilograms into holes in the ground every day of every week of every year. And so we've come a long way. We don't throw away as much anymore, and we know a lot that we didn't know before. So I'm delighted to see this happen. I was on the joint committee that set up the strategy, so well done. And we will address the other issues that, as they come up, as we get the opportunity, and that'll be soon, I hope.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. Councillor Copeland.
Yes, I couldn't resist the opportunity as well, having sat on that waste strategy working group as well. And I see a really great opportunity with this as well, in terms of the actual revenue potential and the potential to actually look at some of the initiatives that we have looked at around glass reusing, community initiatives to actually reduce in a serious way the waste we produce. There's still a lot we can do, and a lot of initiatives that we can employ, but that again requires funding. So I'd like to see us aim high with the new iteration of the joint waste management strategy and actually start seeking to implement some forward-thinking, some further forward-thinking waste minimisation work, knowing that we have some revenue coming in which to do that. And I would like to endorse what Councillor Ward and Councillor Fulton said as well. I'm looking forward to the policy review as it pertains to iwi representation and voting rights on all of our arm's length committees. So very happy.
Councillor Fulton.
I'm going to support this. However, I do note that on page 54 of the agenda, where it says inclusion of Māori in the decision-making process, that Māori have not specifically been consulted on the report. Now, at the joint meeting, I asked for that to take place, and I was given assurance by staff that Māori would be consulted over this issue around governance, so that there was some guidance given to how the governing members would be appointed and whether it would be iwi appointed advisor or whether it would be a Māori advisor with voting rights. So I do feel quite let down that that didn't happen, that there wasn't any consultation with iwi about the best way forward in terms of that governance model, and I hope that that into the future that does take place and that review does occur. I feel that I've been told that again, but I hope that it does come to the next council, and that we can look at how we appoint non-elected members and ensure that they are also given voting rights.
Okay, I'll just invite Mr. Kirby to come back to the table, because I think we just need to clarify that point. Mr. Kirby, just in terms of the issue of whether there was an expectation that you will go away and do some other work that Councillor Fulton feels let down about, could you just put some context around
Tasman
that?
District Council have actually undertaken some consultation with the iwi on it. Part of their LTP process, the amendments that they did. So they did do that. As a Nelson City Council, we haven't actually gone through a process of consultation at all since the workshop at the end of July. But that will occur in the future as part of the overall representation of Maori that we talked about.
That was my expectation, that would be what would happen.
That's right.
So thank you. Right, anyone else wish to speak to this one? I'm going to just speak very briefly to it. So this is a piece of work that I suspect, unless you've been sitting at one of the council tables, you won't recognise how significant it is. We saw some proposed legislation change, a bill come into the House in relation to the Local Government Act, and councils across New Zealand responded to that proposed change. We spoke, and I spoke to the Select Committee, very strongly opposed to what was proposed, what was being sought in terms of establishing organisations like this, but without the input of councils. And all of us across New Zealand as mayors spoke that that was not the process that we wished to follow, that actually local authorities can and do work together, and they can work together in the best interests of their regions. This is an example of two councils who have stuck at it, and it hasn't been easy work. And I know at times several of you would have said to me, walk away, Mayor, because you're not going to get a result. And I don't like giving up on things that are important, things particularly, as Councillor Ward has pointed out, that have quite a history, that are there in the best interests of the people and the environment. And this is certainly that decision today. It has a final step to go through. I'm very hopeful that the Commerce Commission will understand that this represents two councils fulfilling the imperatives of the Local Government Act, which asks us to work together, fulfilling the imperatives of the waste minimisation legislation, and delivering a really positive outcome for both councils and the people of our region and for the environment. It's a good decision. So I'm actually delighted that it's managed to get here today. I would have been quite disappointed if it had to go to the next term of council because this has had a long journey that Councillor Ward has spoken about in terms of the inception in Parliament some time ago. I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Now, councillors, I'm going to move forward in the agenda to just deal with the reports. We should be able to deal with those quite quickly. So pages 98 through 101, we have some minutes to receive from a road stopping. Councillor Davey, thank you. Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Laurie. No questions, no debate. I will put the motion. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Moving to the hearing panel other.
Your Worship, I will move that the unconfirmed minutes of a meeting of the hearings panel other held on 6th of September 2016 be received.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor McGurk. Any questions? Any debate? Okay, so I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Moving to the hearing of deliberations for Scotia Street. Councillor Davey. Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Laurie. Any questions? Any debate? Okay, so I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Aye, against carried. Now, gallery, I'm going to very quickly go into public excluded business to deal with the minutes. It will not take very long. I would not think it will. There's should be a couple of minutes at most, and then we will have dealt with that, and then we'll come back to the final item on the agenda. So I'll move that we go into public excluded business, seconded by Councillor Noonan. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Aye. Thank you, Penny, and we'll invite everybody back into the chamber. And we resume our meeting in public session. The last item of business, and I'll just check, Shaylee, that I've dealt with everything that needs to be dealt with today, apart from item 8, which is a valedictory speech. And I will invite Councillor Ward to come and join me. You may need to adjust the seat somewhat, Councillor Ward. That's all right.
Technical. Actually, adjusting seats has never been my strong suit.
Do you want the other one? I think it's on the side. This one. Where are we? On the side. Come up. I'll just help you. Take my seat.
Penny's bringing Councillor Wards to the table.
Here we go. We're sorted. We've sorted it out. Right. There we go. Councillor Ward, welcome to this auspicious day. I want to say a couple of words as Mayor of the City. It has been a privilege to work with you. There are some people in life that are generous people, extremely generous people, and you are one of those people. You have taught me to, and all of council, to focus on the positives, to have a vision, to articulate a vision, and to encourage others to work in partnership, to work with you, to create the colour and the life around the possibilities of that vision. And I am will be eternally grateful to you. There are many people that never have the opportunity to work with such a positive person, and we are all very, very lucky. As I said to you as we were getting to the end of the process for nominations, are you sure I couldn't encourage you just one more time to come back to serve this council? But in fact, your service is, it's been exemplary, and I don't think you will have spare time. You're not a person, from my observations, that allows your time to be spare. You put it to endeavour and making the best of opportunities, of doing the best for Nelson. And now we think about what we say of Nelson, what we're here to do as a council to make Nelson an even better place. I cannot think of an even better person to articulate that vision and that message. I really want to thank you so much for having been part of this council, for being so kind and so generous, so principled, so thoughtful, and a jolly fine man to work with.
I'm not usually a particularly emotional speaker. Well, I probably am, but if I start to choke up a little, one doesn't give these very often. In fact, I have. I've actually retired once willingly. I've been voted out once. So I contested the mayoralty on actually after my first term, my second term I attempted the mayoralty, and for my third attempt I attempted the mayoralty and they didn't want me. So I was off council. I've been accused of wanting people to be more like me, and I guess if we're all honest, most of us do. We come here with a set of values and principles that we'd like other people to share. And I guess we get elected on those. That is no bad thing. People say, are you listening to the community? Well, yes, I listen to my community. Then I put my values and my principles to work on those and what I hear and say, well, how can I deliver what I hear them saying? And I may not hear them saying exactly what they think they're saying. They may say, build me another whatnot, and I hear them saying, actually, we want to do this. And they've only thought of one way of doing it. And I think, well, is there a better way? Or is there something else they might rather be doing? And I'll advocate for what I think will meet the outcomes they really want. I came into politics on the back of a speech in my staff room at Tokoroa High School a long time ago. I was 32 or 33 years old, and the then leader of the Values Party came into council, into the staff room, and he said, he probably talked about the environment, but I don't remember that. I remember him talking about the absurdities of life. You know, about the fact that we had more machines than we've ever had before, and we spent more time working than we ever had before. We had more motor cars and more roads and faster cars and faster roads, and we spent more time getting places. That we had all the medical procedures under the sun, and we kept on getting sick. And I could add to a few that have come up since then, you know, that we've already got everything. We're wealthier than we've ever been, and our favourite pastime is shopping. I could add that we've got more means of communicating than we've ever had before, and possibly spent too little time talking to ourselves or to one another. So it's the absurdities that got me in. In the fullness of time, I became aware of the planet and our obligations to it. I probably wasn't at 32 or 33, but the challenges then were not as obvious either. And when I was sitting in the little waiting room in Parliament back in 2004, and I picked up the March edition of The Ecologist, and it was an update on climate change, which I'd known about for a very long time, but it told me chapter and verse, and it upset me greatly. So I started thinking about this and saying, well, what else has happened in the history of my planet? So I started looking at it. One of the things I read about there was that back about 250 million years ago, the Permian Age came to an end. It was apparently the most abundant age in the history of the planet. And apparently some volcanoes went off somewhere up where Siberia is now. And the planet overheated by 6 degrees and wiped out 99.9% of the life on the planet. And it took about 10 million years for the planet to recover because the planet is well able to look after itself. But I wondered, I got to looking back at the history of my planet, and it's a wonderful story. That 1 billion years after the beginning of the planet, about 16 billion years after the beginning of time, life happened. I find that extraordinary. I don't know why other people hadn't told me about it and found it as extraordinary as I did. But then life happened. How did that happen? Did it come from outer space? Maybe. Where the descent of extraterrestrials arrived frozen and found an environment it could breed in. But where there hadn't been no life, all of a sudden life happened. Or maybe it was just a soupy mix and lightning hit it and bang, it started breathing and breeding. And 1 billion years later, you know, it had changed the planet. I find that a remarkable story. And I realized that the absurdities of life were the ones that had got me into politics, were the things that most threatened us. And I've always thought life could be more fun. So when I, talk about my aspirations for my community, more fun is in there. More gorgeous, safer, healthier, wiser, friendlier, more generous, inclusive, sustainable. Just go on putting your superlatives in. And that ought to be all of our mantra. Where do we want to be? And what do we have to do to make that happen? So when I waved Nelson 2060 around, I left it over here. That was the first time that somebody had looked out far enough to say, how good could we be? We could have it as good as we would like. What would we like to bequeath to our children? Well, I don't have until 2050. So we need to get our skates on. But it was quite a remarkable document. Enough about the past. From here, look, we all ought to come here with a wish list. We're accused of having one, and I think we all ought to have one. We all ought to have aspirations for our community. When somebody comes in here and says, look, I'm not here to tell you what to do, I agree with them. I don't think it's about telling you what to do, but we ought to have aspirations for our community. And people ought to know what they are. And they should drive us. That should be the passion in our lives. So when you come back next time, part of my wish list is that you will listen to one another and hear what each of your passions are for the new incoming council. What do you care about? And how can you turn those passions into things which make our community as good as 2012 would have it? And I'd like you all to have projects if you get back, that spell out how that project will contribute to the kind of behaviours and the kind of city that you would like to be part of. And so, it's my wish list. Perhaps leaving it a bit late because the last meeting is possibly a little late to make that happen. But you can think about these ones. The bridge on Bridge Street, I rather like the idea of paving it from side to side with timber and the top end there, and then getting the working bee out to paint the buildings. I think that'd be lovely. I think we need to work with our architects and colour gurus and artists to do a colour scheme for the CBD. I think it would be wonderful. Just imagine that we get it up there and we have a colour scheme. So anyone wants to paint their buildings, we say, look, here's what your building could look like. Not making anybody do anything, but buildings do get painted from time to time. Just imagine if we had a stunning colour-scape, so when people came here, you could just look up and say, this colour, this place sings. It does, it's very beautiful, but could even be more beautiful. A drop dead, and the playground on Rutherford. No, not just any playground. So I have some little reminders here and gifts. So.
Yes, remember this? Remember this.
So this one here is the wind-blown swing, you see. Can you imagine it sitting out there? And I got up this morning at 4:45 and did some read. So when the wind blows, it just moves. It doesn't swing wild. It just teeters. Can you imagine just sitting up there and just teetering? So, Alec, you're the engineer, my friend. So you can look after this one. But you see, one of our councillors, I mean, you've all come up with pearls of wisdom, but one of them asked some time back, look, why is our playground just for 11 to or 5 to 13-year-olds or whatever it was, you know? And I thought, just imagine now you have a seat which is balanced on a spring here, you see, and it has a feather on it, so that when somebody sits on it and the wind blows it, your seat doesn't sit still, it just moves. Okay, now this needs to go to somebody who's really hard-working and can drive it. Now, we're going to have a new chair of community services, but I think that the person who actually raised the idea of a playground that was for everybody was Gail. So Gail, this is for you to look after and make happen, okay? This is...
Oh, it's wonderful.
Write the next chapter of my next bit of the wish list is write the next chapter of Nelson 2060. It is a book. It is a gorgeous book that shows what Nelson looks like in 2060. And it's illustrated with all the great things that have already happened here and which have contributed already to us being the city we want to be. It's the kind of thing that I don't think it'll cost anything. I think it's the kind of thing that people will be hanging out to own. This is a gorgeous city, and we need to pick out those things which are getting us there already, so we know what we're aiming for. Nelson 2060 is a bit short on detail. In fact, it never was intended to be a detailed document. So that's next part of my wish list. The Make Good Things Happen team. When we decided that we would do partnerships for our funding, I suggested instead of our staff going out there and vetting where the money's gone to and who we should give it to, we should say when people come in here and want things to happen, they're just not coming in for money. I hate giving away money. I've given away a lot of money, some other people's money over the years. And I always say, well, actually, damn it, it comes to that time and groups all over the community say, oh my God, it's that time. What are we going to ask for this year? And I would like us to be a city that thinks of what do we want to do to make this city great? And we've got a team in here that can help them to make it happen. And there may be some money there, but that isn't the first thing. We have expertise that enable people to do the great stuff they want to see happen. I'd like new words for the opening prayer, if I may, as well. You know, I just some words that actually speak for everybody, and a little more aspirational. You know, something that actually reminds us every time you come in here of why you're here. Now, partnerships are about relationships, and they take time. So you know, we need people. We need to have the time to create those partnerships. A community gets behind us if they believe in what we're doing. And too often they come in late. The first time they hear about all the things we've been doing in workshops and debating at great length is when we decide what to do. And all of a sudden they haven't been party to the conversations. And so they don't know why we don't want them to have fences on their front, boundary. All they know, we're not going to let them have one, even if they do. Even the best reasons in the world, we're not going to let them. They don't know about the safe communities. We don't know about all the other aspirations we have for their neighbourhoods that went behind that. So get in early, have those conversations early, and so that we take them with us and talk about our successes. I want to remind you of the outrageously ambitious things that have happened in the city that make us as good as we are. Can you imagine now that somebody would have the nerve to say, look, we'll take over a car park and we'll have a market every Saturday morning. And people will come from all over the country and the world to see this market. It will be the best damn market in New Zealand, and some say on the planet. Well, Nita Knight did that. She didn't come and ask for money. She came and said, could I do it? And because there was no shopping on Saturdays then, so it was a bit of a doozy, wasn't it? But, you know, that was somebody who didn't come asking for money. They got up their backside, made it happen. Or somebody who decided they want to do a wearable art thing, you know, where people bring in wearable art and they put it on their clothes. Again, there was no request to council. It went to my mate Elko. He wrote a cheque for $1,000 and it happened. I'm off there tomorrow. Just imagine that, you know, some people came here, a very small city, and they couldn't get from Tahuna to the city because there was a precipitous, you know, cliff and you know, rocks and sea crashing on it, and they decided to build a wall, a stone wall that went all the way from Tahuna to the city. What an outrageously ambitious undertaking. With rocks carved out of stone on the other side of the bay, and bring them over here and hoist them into place with pulley and rope. That's ambitious, a tiny city. Or somebody decided we're going to have a fancy fence on the top of it and donate some money to put it there. Or somebody who decided we want some steps in a cathedral right in the city. Or somebody who decides that, you know, we're going to have a cycle strategy. And that was, you know, a bunch of cycling activists and mountain bikers have turned this into the cyclingest city in New Zealand. It's been, none of this could have happened without councils, by the way. Councils have been part of this. When people criticise my council, I leap to their defence every time. Because the city is as gorgeous as it is as successful as it is as inclusive as it is, because successive councils have made it so. Working in partnership with a whole bunch of ambitious and really neat people who wanted things to happen here. So, where to now? Oh, look, I want to just mention a couple of other more recent ones. Julian Rain, you know, an ambitious person. Let's give them milk in a bottle again. Love it. Kevin Hopgood comes here, starts a restaurant, you know, and says, I'm going to serve local food. Great, you know, what a wonderful restaurant. Pete Rainey, you know, Smoke-Free Rock Quest started here. I could go on, and you could too, and we should, because this is one extraordinarily creative city, and we ought to be reminding people constantly of all the things that make us better than we were. What next? Well, I have a book to write. Immediately I've got to go off to WOW. I have a piece on the stage. I've had an email saying it doesn't look bad because I sent somebody to the dress rehearsal last night, so I go to see that tomorrow night. I have a book to finish. What's the book about? Well, it's a memoir. It's part of it's fiction because it hasn't all happened yet. I've written the sequel to the memoir as well, you see. I've got some lovely stuff to make as well. So there is no Mike Ward sculpture in the city, so if I can find someone to sponsor, I've got a really neat piece that I always wanted to build, really big, really grand. I'm a sculptor, so maybe, you know, if I can find someone to pay the money it will take to build this thing, I will build it. But we'll leave a few other things lying around anyway, because I'll hopefully have some time to do that. And I think I might go back to Parliament. I think there's a gap in the spectrum for a different political movement, a collaborative movement, one that doesn't find fault, one that doesn't compel, one that actually puts out does it Nelson 2060 for New Zealand. Who knows, that might happen. I'd like to thank some folk. I'd like to thank you all for your wisdom. There's not one of you that hasn't said things that I've thought, oh, that was smart. I can go around the table. You know, now look, Ian and I aren't really political sort of allies particularly, but I know this guy grows stuff brilliantly. He does. And I also heard him say, the bit that I loved, the best thing was the bit about turning Stoke into the Mapua, you know, idea. Mapua is a lovely place, but it's full of rich people, whereas Stoke is full of a mix of people. And that's not a bad ambition, you know, to say how gorgeous can we, much more interesting can we make Stoke? I can look. I'm not going to go around you one by one, but I could. And I thank you for your support and your affection. If I've been awful to you at times, and I have lost it occasionally, I apologise. Can I tell you, I have done much worse things in the past. I have had to apologise to council for impugning the integrity of my council, which I did in my first term. I said that local government was run by a bunch of grey-haired old men. And I was duly reported, and I had to sit there while they went round the table and told me my pedigree. Derek Shaw says talking my way out of that was the best speech I ever gave. I can't remember, but they ended up laughing at me, or with me. I'm not sure. I've been threatened with legal action. I'd like to thank my family, and particularly John, who looks after the shop when I'm not here. This is the first time I've had family in here, in the chamber, ever. They've seen me in Parliament, they haven't seen me here, so thank you, John DeForm.
Thank you, Georgie.
I'd like to thank my running mate, Ray, who listens to me every Saturday morning, says, write the book. And the other people who befriend me and listen to me and hear the same stories over and over again. That's what you do when you get old. You tell the same stories over and over again. And I'd like to thank the folk of Nelson, who have really treated me outrageously well. I say I pay less and I get more than anybody, and have for a long time. I get told that being a councillor is a thankless task. It never has been. I get thanked all the time. I say, what are you thanking me for? I get told that you are the mayor, aren't you? Or you have been the mayor. People don't know much about local government. And there's a whole bunch of people out there who think that I have been mayor. Some people think, that I am. I put them right, I remain the best mayor never had. But I get the affection. And I'm not a person who has a huge range of friends. You'll see I spend a lot of time on my own, always have. It's just me. But I get my ego stroked every time I go out. So thank you.
John T, thank you for sharing your father with us and with the city. You look after him. Mike, we have it's a small gift. Nothing can ever be enough, but enjoy. It's quite hard to give a gift to a creative person, and so we've left an opportunity for you to create something wonderful to record. Enjoy.
Thank you very much.
All right, Joy. Well, of course. Please.
Oh, look, I'll be brief. Mike, I can't believe we're at this juncture, to be honest with you. It seems such a long time, and you have been a great colleague. I just wanted to reflect on a couple of things. How you just do what you want to do and make it so successful, whether it's the wearable art entries, or, as I remember last summer, meeting you and Jonty up the Rainbow as you were running and triking the length of the South Island, which I just thought was such an amazing thing to do. Your creativity is phenomenal, and but what really amazes me is your generosity, and it doesn't matter whether it's making a little copper ring, a very simple little copper ring for one of my kids, and they really treasure it. But to another occasion, I just was completely blown away. I was sitting in the pub with you and some mates, and we were. One of them was a member of the orchestra, and they were talking about a concert coming up and how they were struggling to make things work out. And you pulled your checkbook out and wrote out a cheque for $1,000. And I know that that's a lot of money, and I was just absolutely gobsmacked. So you're a generous man on a whole range of levels. So I just salute you. And as you are creative, I would like to give you a little creative gesture from me. So, as I can, I'm going to play you a little tune. This is called A Wali Wali, which is not a Scottish song. And this is especially for you.
If I may, please. So, Mike, I remember coming down to you as a 13-year-old, 14-year-old young college girl, newly moved to Nelson, and you had your cart downtown there, and I remember that so well. Those conversations we had while you fashioned the piece or adjusted the size of the bracelet or the ring that I bought. And I remember that happening on numerous occasions, having conversations that always sparked my interest. And I really look back on that formative time and the input that you had in my thinking and my life as being part of what's brought me here to this place today. So I'd like to thank you and honour you deeply for your influence on my life, and also your continual focus on picking out the positive, your mentoring through the 6 years of council, in finding the way to express yourself without putting down the other. And I really hold your aspirations for central government in terms of finding a collaborative way forward, of optimising the opportunities and the points that we actually all agree on and working from there. So I mark you as a really strong and central person in my life who has brought me to this place in many ways. So I just want to honour you deeply, Mike, and we are so going to miss your voice of reason around this table. You have no idea, that is, those of us that will come back. So just thank you so much, Mike, and your planting of seeds throughout your life have flourished into so many other lives, and I thank you for that. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. I just want to tell you something. I don't think I've told you this story, but about 18 years ago, a mate of mine was heading off to the UK to pursue his career. He was a bit younger than me. We had a coffee at the coffee cart at the top of Trafalgar Street, and he had lots to do, and he had a plane to catch, and he took off. And I sat there in the sun and just took in Nelson, and I was loving living in Nelson, and I hadn't been here for very long. And I looked across and I saw you and Elko Boswick having a big old chat. And I looked at you two guys and I thought, I want to be like that. And I think you've played a part in me choosing to stay in Nelson. And I've always admired the way that you've walked the walk and you've talked the talk. And you've always struck me as a guy who knew exactly where his tūranga waiwai was or is. And yeah, and I saw that in you and Elko that day, and I thought, that's pretty cool. So, thanks for being there that morning.
Thank you.
Mike, I've only been here for 3 years, so I've only worked with you for 3 years. And when I came in, I thought, I wonder what I've got in common with Mike. I thought, there's probably very little. But I think there's a lot. There's a lot of common ground that you and I share. And one of those important ones was when we sat down and did the community outcomes together, and how easy it was to get those together in such a quick time, and we use those all the time, and I really appreciated that working relationship, because there aren't many times that you get to work with someone in a small group, and that's where I feel I have learned a lot from you in that area. And I just say, I'm really rapt that you have made that, and I remember the day that we had that meeting, and you were sitting down there and you were sketching away, and I was rapt that you took it and made it into something bigger than the suggestion. So thank you so much for the time that you've been here, and I've learned a lot. And I think the positive, which I've said, I've written in the card, and the thing that I think from you that the best for me and the best learning part for me is that you've turned things into the positive. You've often said, we're looking at this in a negative vein. We should be encouraging people rather than regulating. We should be making it more interesting and positive. And so I'm going to try and take that, and if I get re-elected, I would like to take that piece of knowledge that you've given to me and use that. Thank you.
Mike, 10 years ago, it would be about 10 years ago, I was heading to the west coast in my patrol car, and I'm driving past Kawateri Junction and said, hang about, something not right here. So I turn around, go back. Here's Mike Ward sitting at the Kawateri Junction bus stop with his trike. And this is about 8:15 in the morning. So I go back and I speak to Mike. And Mike, you said to me, it's downhill all the way from Top House down to here, but I'm catching the bus to get to Westport. So you made a wise decision, because that road through the Upper Buller Gorge is bloody dangerous for a cyclist. And you showed that you did have some common sense and some prudence about where you rode your bike. But Mike, I've known you for some time, and before this last interview I was on council. We've crossed paths a few times, in the best way, not in the worst way. And it's been a pleasure to know you and to admire your stand on your principles, and that you won't bend them to meet what other people expect. I admire that in you, so thank you very much.
Mike, thank you for your kind words before. You and I have served the people of Nelson for a long time, and I can recall being responsible for the administration of this place when you stood for council. And at about this time in the election process, around the management table, we were thinking, now how are we going to deal with this fellow? This fellow's been controversial. He's been a hawker in the street. It's created a lot of talk and discussion, and he doesn't even have a telephone. How are we going to be able to look after him and get him to the papers and everything that are necessary? But it worked out. I think you did get a telephone not long after that. I've enjoyed a lot of times with you. I've enjoyed, my wife and I, Margaret, we've enjoyed sitting with you and your wife at tables for civic dinners and other functions. And I've enjoyed the fact that that we don't always agree on everything, but we don't always disagree either. And I think it's been good for everybody that we've been able to get to where we are today, and for you to be leaving here knowing that your colleagues around here are going to be sad to see you go, including me.
Thank you. Well, we all probably have similar stories, but I wanted to talk a little bit about how when I was a young girl, buying jewellery off Mike Ward on the street is a very memorable occasion for me, and I still have my little necklace with the words Kate on it. And 20 years later, coming back to the Nelson market, and my children all had $1 each to spend, and we wandered around the market and saw Mike, and I went up and said, oh, you might remember me, I bought jewellery off you when I was a teenager, and of course I do. And then he talked to the children, and they looked at the rings, and an hour and a half later, Mike had made each one of my children a little ring for $3 to take back to Melbourne with them. And I think that the part you've played in making Nelson a special place is something which we all know and acknowledge, and it's what brought me back, that's a part of what brought me back to Nelson, that love for Nelson comes from the people as well as the place, and it's the care and the kindness that you show to each individual person and making them feel special that makes us more vibrant and makes us want to do the very best we can do. So I do remember when I decided to stand for council, that inspiration came from you, and I hope you realise how much you have given to people. You've given a great deal to people, and we really appreciate your support and your wisdom, particularly over the last 6 years, guiding us in how to navigate our way through the processes of council. So thank you, Mike.
Well, I think we need to let this treasure go. Time to let you go and sail well. Enjoy that wonderful experience of tomorrow. I look forward to seeing what's going to be on the stage from the artist Mike Ward next week. It'll be fantastic. So thank you, Mike. It's very sincere thanks from all of us.
Could I say I've got something, one last little gift to this. This is for Claire and the staff. This is a copy of my newest Lush Green Gospel. When I've sold 1 million, it will give me the money to pay for a whole lot of really wonderful things to happen, you see. So this one is for free, even though I know you could well afford to pay for it. But this is a Lush Green Gospel, and this just sort of is my spin on what you need to do to enjoy life, you see. And whenever any of your staff do one of these things, you can tick it off and say, there's another another contribution to Nelson 2060, all right? So this is for you, my dear.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. Go on. Well done.
All right, it is time to go. It's time to go. Go well, fly well, and I'm going to close this meeting, the last one of the triennium, and let's get out into that beautiful, beautiful Nelson Day, out of this chamber. Thank you again, Jonty. Thank you.